All right, all right. Once again, back live with Chris Griffin of the Horns Down podcast. How are you today, Chris?
Hey man, I'm doing great. How you doing today?
Couldn't be much better, man. It's a Friday, college football starting tomorrow. That's always a good time. So let us know before we really get started. Where can everybody find you? What do you do? And let them know about your counterpart who sadly can't be here today.
Yeah, shout out to Seth, my guy Seth Oliveris. Everybody, I am one half of the Horns Down. Let me put that in there real quick. Horns Down podcast, where we talk everything OU related. We talk everything Big 12 related. We talk college football as well. We don't do as much national topics as my guy Ty does on his show, on his incredible network. But no, you can find us on any podcast format that you have: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever the case may be. We're the Horns Down podcast. We also have a YouTube channel, but we mostly do a lot of stuff, put a lot of our content actually on the podcast. But yeah, you can find us there. You can find us on Twitter as well.
Man, as always, and Seth, let him know about Seth as well, because we got to get him on here one time.
Hey, so Seth actually writes for the Crimson and Cream machine, does some stuff with SB Nation. So he always has a bunch of content. You can find him at Seth Oliveris. It's Oliveras. He does incredible work. He's the brains of our show, the football mind. Me, I'm the troll. Sometimes I hit a couple of gems, but that guy's pretty incredible. We got to get him on a live stream with us one of these days.
Oh, yeah, man. I can't wait. So, man, week 8 coming up, and this is actually maybe the first weekend of college football where when you look at it, you just don't have those games that are really just calling out to you like weeks past. I mean, there's some good games to go around, right, for us because we love college football. But for your casual viewer, this week right here has got a little bit lacking. So I kind of wanted to start within the Big 12 because y'all have a matchup that y'all should just absolutely walk through. And interestingly enough, we got the most unsurprising news in the world this week that Caleb Williams has been officially named the starter. So talk to me about what you're expecting for Kansas this weekend.
I think for Kansas, probably the number one thing on everybody's radar is let's just get through this game healthy. We're a bit beat up. I was talking to my uncle before we jumped on here, and I started naming a couple of names, and he was like, "Man, I haven't thought about him in a while. You're missing Cody Jackson. You're missing. You haven't heard anything from Brian Darby in a while, and Brian Darby got a lot of time out the gate, especially in that Tulane game leading into the Western Carolina game. But you're just kind of like, man, that's a name you haven't heard. And you've seen a lot of them. As many rotations as Lincoln and Grinch have both made on each side of the ball. There's some names out there that you're not saying, oh my gosh, those guys are just jaw-dropping guys, but you're like, yeah, they add continuity to what you're trying to do out there. So with that being said, I think number one thing on everybody's radar is just getting through this game healthy. I can go out here on a limb and say, yeah, I want to see OU go out there and dominate both sides of the ball, which they should. That's the expectation. Naturally. But you just want to see a good, clean game and see improvement. You want to see, and I think the improvement that I want to see is just mentality. I just want to see, are we mature enough to go out here and handle a team we should beat by 30 plus, or is this going to be a game that we win probably we're up by 15 and up by 14, and they keep it close for a while, and then we end up playing around with Kansas, and then we end up just squashing them by like 20, 25. You get what I'm saying? I just want to see a convincing win. I really don't think there's anything that you can get from this game that is going to make you feel like, yeah, we're world beaters. You're just expecting to be, yeah. You just want to walk away from this game 8-0 and injury free. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with both of those points. That's exactly where I have it. I think I might be looking for, from a schematic and technical standpoint, is seeing if the playbook continues to open up with Caleb Williams, to see if there's any new wrinkles, because inevitably, they're using this. It's not practice, but at the same time, it's practice for Caleb Williams. You got to implement new portions of the offense, and what better time to do that in the live game? So I'm very interested in that regard. But like you said, other than that, there's not much we're going to be able to look at and take away from this and just be able to write home about. There'll be a little small thing here and there. How does the run game continue? I think y'all should be able to run it all over Kansas, especially with Caleb. But it's just things like that. Now, John points out Woody Washington, DJ Graham both out, Jalen Redmond out, Darian Turner yell out. For people not aware, what is the time frame looking like? Because I'm even a little bit not sure on some of these guys.
Well, I mean, you say the word timeline. I think you should use that loosely because you just got to look at the matchups. I mean, you're playing TCU, although TCU isn't great, you're still looking at TCU and saying, you should be able to beat TCU.
So it's almost like a need by need basis, right?
Yeah, it's a need by need basis. I think that you're pretty much, in my opinion, what you're going to see Lincoln and all of them do is just, hey, let's just call it a day. We're good enough as is to beat a Kansas and a Texas Tech. Now, I don't think you should go out there and play around with Texas Tech, but I think you're good enough to beat both of those teams by double digits. I think that you'll see some of those guys sprinkle in because you got to think about it. Although we can name big names like Jalen Redmond, Woody Washington, Jeremiah Cradell, you still got to look at guys like Isaiah Coe as well, who was nicked up. He was available in the TCU game. I think he may have been out there a couple of snaps, may have not even played the entire game, but he was suited up. Delarian Turner-Yell, as far as I know, he was back. I mean, he's good. He probably wasn't suited. He wasn't suited up, but at the same time, I think those guys are healthy and they're ready to go. They're just giving them more rest. I think when you look at, obviously, Delarian Turner-Yell is our best safety. I feel like he really is our best safety. Pat Fields has that continuity and that maturity, but when you look at just production-wise, I think it's him. But at the same time, I'm not particularly upset with how this is going because you're getting those younger guys reps, and you're going to have to lean on those guys as well. And one guy that I want to say that has gotten a lot of snaps this year, who I'm happy to see is actually out there playing, Key Lawrence. So it's not that I want Delarian Turner-Yell back, but I want a healthy Delarian Turner-Yell. I want a 100% one because that 3-game stretch that we have, that's where the money is going to be made for OU this year. You got a tough one at Baylor, got another tough one against Iowa State, and then depending on how this game goes tomorrow and then how a few other games go for them, you might have a possible top 10, top 15, or at least a top 25 matchup against OSU towards the end of the season. So
that's what I was going to say. We're going to talk about next because the OSU's got an interesting game tomorrow. But so I agree because this is something I think that points back to what Alex Grinch and y'all wanted to do is develop depth, right? And you got to look at the simple blessings of the situation and realize that now you're getting guys, because Cradell, very talented player, he gets nicked up, right? And now Billy Bowman. Yeah. Billy Bowman's, for a first-year guy, he's experienced at this point. Yeah. So I think in the long run, especially with the aspirations you have to feel good about it, to your point. Mm-hmm. You never want to see an injury, but you do have to look at the silver linings in these situations.
My uncle, one of my uncles who's a coach, he always would say about like freshmen on the team, he would say, hey, he would pull me aside or pull somebody else aside and he'd be like, hey, that kid right there is going to be able to help us down the stretch. And I was like, how long are you going to wait for him? He had this saying about circle the wagon, circle the wagon, circle the wagon. Well, he was like, no, that kid's going to get on the wagon with us because by the time we hit that middle point of the season, with the way that I'm going to play him and the way that I'm going to be on him, that kid will be a sophomore pretty much out there on the floor. Like he's going to be that experienced and he's going to know what he should be doing. So I think that translates over to a Billy Bowman, to a Latrell McCutcheon. Coming into the season, they had big hopes for him anyways to go ahead and take a starter spot. So you're looking at him and looking at DJ Graham. Jaden Davis has been kind of sporadic or whatnot, but I think a guy like Joshua Eaton should start getting more time. Granted, that Johnson did get that touchdown on him, but when you look at those guys, you just said the key word. It's all about depth. we've been begging for that depth and development, but we've been begging for depth for the longest at OU on that defensive side of the ball. Your two deep has to be great because you see all these other top teams, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, all these teams, they can go two deep across the board. And a lot of their two deep guys are guys who are second on the chart. Even some of the three guys, those guys can go and start anywhere in the nation. So I think overall with this Kansas and OU game, I mean, I think what it just boils down to is just, hey, get us to 8-0 and get us to 8-0, give us a convincing win, stay injury free, and you're good.
Good to go. Now, something you said that's really interesting, right, is about like over the course of the season, how freshmen evolve, right? And one of the things that has me thinking, and I don't know the answer, I want to hear from chat. I want to hear from you. Jant Sports, guys, if y'all aren't subscribed to his YouTube channel, be sure to go hit up Jant Sports. Jant, you already know. If you want the link, you just let me know. You get sent it over, hop in here. But one of the things that I really am interested in, I want to hear your opinion. I want to hear chat's opinion. When we look at last year in particular, right? We look at some of these young guys who played. And one of the things I was talking about in the offseason is a lot of these freshmen that played and got really adequate reps last year. I mean, they're on a different level because you didn't even have an offseason last year. So everything that was being told to them in practice, they'd have to go to a game with no time to really let it sink in and learn in the best setting possible, best and worst. Let's be honest, right? Like if you're not ready for it, that's not a good situation. But do you think that for those guys, right? Like I'm looking at like off the top of my head, Will Anderson for Alabama comes in as a true, that guy right there. I mean, right now, wouldn't you think that mentally he's like a junior because of what he endured last year and then a sophomore this year, but mentally those guys. So what do you think, like for OU, do you think last year y'all got some of that as well, where some of these guys just got mentally years worth of experience within a short condensed time period?
I would tend to say no, because especially on the defensive side of the ball, you got a lot of savvy vets out there. I mean, you got to think you're too deep on at cornerback. You had Trey Brown and you had Trey Brown and Woody Washington as your starters, and then you sprinkled in Jaden Davis, but mostly you were sprinkling in Graham. That was kind of like your three that you just saw a lot. That's a great point. Marvin Mills.
That is a good point.
Yeah. Marvin Mills for sure. I'm thinking defensively. I'm thinking defensively, but not on the defensive side. Yeah,
me too.
Not on the defensive side of the ball as much. But when you look at the offensive side of the ball, yeah, for sure, Marvin Mims has a grasp of that offense. I think the problem was just the fact that, and this pains me to say, but your quarterback wasn't able to actually unlock that during the first 6 games of the season, and it took until you got to midway through the sixth game of this season to actually unlock him and actually show that he could be featured. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. That's the hard part with wide receivers. And John, you make a great point. Marvin Mims, he grew up a lot. And I think you see that with some of the 50-50 balls that he's been thrown this year. His ability to stay completely calm in those situations, uncanny. It's not something you're used to seeing, and that's the mark of a wide receiver we look at, and we're like, okay, well, you've got it, right? We're not worried about you. I think that's why national media people that were high on Marvin Mims coming into this year haven't had much to say about his down production, because we've seen like, okay, you're a guy. We know you're capable of this. Who else is there? OU has got plenty of those.
Yeah.
But to your point, you're relying on really 9 other people to do their job before you can ever get the ball in your hands to do your job. So that is tough. John also says Woody Washington got the same experience last year, and he's our best cornerback right now, but he's hurt. Yeah, that injury is really that's a tough one. And Chris pointed
it's like
out.
his bone and the muscle are like detached.
I've not really read a whole lot into it, but I don't get it. And obviously I'm not a medical professional, so I'm probably but
it's hard to speculate on exactly what the injury is, but I've heard something close to that. And they go back and forth, because I've heard one voice in the room say he could possibly be out for the year. Then I've heard some voices say, no, it heals, but it's just one of those chronic injuries where it's like, few days, great, Then the next day is kind of like as kind of lingering. It's just one of those things that's probably going to linger out through the year. If he plays, he's probably going to have to play around 80%, I would say.
Did he have surgery?
I don't believe he's had surgery. I think it's just one of those things that has had to heal on its own.
So the reason I ask is because I don't know if you remember, Tua had that ankle injury. You get that stitch job that they do down there in Birmingham. That's fascinating in and of its own right. If y'all don't know about that, check that procedure out. You don't have to know about medicine. That's just unbelievable at the modern technology we have at our disposal, and that's a good indication of it. But that's the only reason I asked, because I didn't know if it was like a little injury that a stitch job could get in there and fix up.
No, I really haven't heard too much about it as well. But I mean, I do think that you'll get him back though. I definitely do think you'll get him back. I think you're gonna get all those guys back. By the time that Baylor game rolls around, coming out of that bye week, I think you're gonna see a lot of heads start popping up because a lot of those guys are close. I know when I was at the Red River game a few weeks ago, Woody Washington, Jeremiah Cradell, I mean, they were walking out there fine. No walking boots, no cast, no anything. I mean, they were out there. They were jovial with their teammates. They were happy. They were excited. They were part of the whole, comeback, ramping everybody up, talking to people on the sideline, pepping, walking around before pregame. I mean, they were just chilling out there on the field. And I was like, man, I wish y'all were in pads. But, I think it's just those soft tissue injuries that you just can't ever really predict when they're going to fully heal. You get what I'm saying? So
yeah, I was always told by some of my coaches growing up, some of your muscle injuries are worse than some of your other injuries you'd think would be much more serious because of the fickle nature in which muscles heal. That's about the extent of my medical knowledge, and that's all. But that's just a rotten situation, man, especially for how important Woody Washington is. And then like Roberto points out, Jalen Redmond's hurt as well. It's just, that's football, man. Like, it's such a weird, fickle game. Yeah. But another game in y'all's conference we alluded to earlier, I want to talk about it, is that Oklahoma State Iowa State game. And I know you had a pretty big take about Oklahoma State the other day. So what are you thinking for that Oklahoma State Iowa State game?
I got Iowa State winning this game something around like, they scored 33 points against K-State last week. I'm going to go K-State. I mean, I'm going to go Iowa State. I know people in the chat going to go crazy over this. I'm going to go Iowa State 30-20. 30-20. Got it. It's going to be a weird scoring game. It's going to be a weird scoring game. I do think that OSU will be able to move the ball some because I don't know how often they're going to come up and load the box and force Spencer Sanders to make plays down the field. I think that's kind of the game plan.
That's just not what they do.
Yeah, that's just not what they do. They're always going to play that soft zone, keep everything in front of them. I mean, outside of Tate Martin, I will say that Oklahoma State does have capable wide receivers. I just don't trust them offensively with Spencer Sanders. I really don't. And defensively, now I'm on record for saying a whole bunch of things about these teams. On one end, let's just call it what it is. Oklahoma State's defense is a fraud. But on the other hand, as much as I don't care for Spencer Sanders, Brock Purdy may be the worst quarterback in the Big 12, in my opinion. I think his decision, numbers-wise, he's a good quarterback. But when you look at the actual details of the game and you watch him play, he makes some of the most terrible decisions. Like some of the interceptions he throws, I mean, they are bad. They are really bad.
It's so interesting you say that. Jance, what's up, my man? Glad to have you in here. What's going on? Just another Friday talking college football, man. The usual. But one of the first videos I made on my channel was talking about how I thought Brock Purdy hurt his draft stock tremendously last year in the first two games. I was so put off by what I had seen in those two games that I was willing to go on camera and be like, hey, this guy just hurt his draft stock and like he's going to need stellar play out the back end. Mm-hmm. Because if you look back at before last year, he was an individual coming into that year that everybody had him as one of the top quarterback prospects.
Yeah.
Right? Like everybody was enamored. And it last year was painful. This year they started off painful. It's increased. Iowa State has the 42nd ranked offense in the nation. Oklahoma State is coming in with the 81st ranked offense in the nation. So this isn't exactly an offensive game to write home about.
So granted, I may have my feelings about him as a quarterback. I know people are calling me a hater on about Brock Purdy. I will say this: he's an NFL quarterback.
Oh, he's got ability.
He'll get a shot at the league. I just think that his decision making. I know you've been critical of Spencer Rattler in the past, but I just think that if you look at his decision making, I'm like, come on, some of the picks that he's thrown, I'm like, come on, man. Like he has some games where I'm just like, he just gets really pick happy. But as far as this game here, I think that the X factor, honestly, is Spencer Sanders. I think what kind of Spencer Sanders do you get? Do you get the patient one who's going to make the right throws, make the right reads? I know they're going to be able to run the ball. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Jaylen Warren, but I do think that he's a hard north-south type of, north-south type of guy. He's not going to run east and west. He's coming at you looking for a hole that he can get through, but he's willing to pick up those tough yards. So my whole thing is just making it. I mean, that's where I'm at with the game. I think that it's going to be won by Spencer Sanders. How mature is he going to be out there with that football? And is his wide receiving core outside of Tate Martin, which Tate Martin doesn't really scare you because he hasn't really gotten off this year, but at the same time, you're just looking at him and saying he has big play capability because of his speed. But the other wide receivers, you're just kind of like, are they going to drop passes? Are they going to do things? But I mean, like I said, Spencer Sanders, that's who it all boils down to me. Every game that they play, that's what I say. What type of game is he going to play? Because I think a lot of people have made a big deal out of the fact that Oklahoma State defense is stellar. But I'm here to tell you, even as an Oklahoma fan, Texas lost both of those games in consecutive weeks. It was more about Texas than I think it was about the adjustments that either team made. Texas just isn't that good. They literally ran out of gas. And so I think that's a big part of it.
Yep. Jance, before I give it to you to get your take on this game, I just gave the offensive rankings for this team, so I want to supply the defensive rankings as well. That way we can kind of get a holistic picture. Iowa State comes in right now with the third-ranked defense in college football. Oklahoma State having a defense that ranks within the top 20 at 18. So that is the strength of both of these units. What are you thinking about this game, Jance?
I think this game is going to be one in the trenches. I think that both teams have capable running backs that of course can take over a game. I agree with you. Both defenses come in there and they are extremely physical. And I think what's pretty interesting about about this game is that both teams have kind of struggled against of course.
Cutting in and out there.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but as I was saying, like it's interesting to see. Both teams kind of struggle in the early part of in the first half of the season. Like we had high expectations for both teams, but they kind of struggle a little bit earlier on. And now we're starting to see this. Now we're starting to see kind of both these teams really start to kind of establish their identity defensively, running the football. Both have quarterbacks that can manage the game well. And not really make those typical mistakes. I agree though. I think for Sanders not going to make those huge mistakes. I think he's a guy that's going to take care of the football. I think they're going to heavily rely on Breece Hall. I think they're heavily going to rely on those tight ends that have come up and made huge plays. But for the most part, this is a game that's going to be won with on both sides of football inside the trenches.
Yeah, and that's so weird to think about when we're thinking about the kind of MO that Big 12 football has been thought of over the past 5 years, that we're sitting here talking about a Big 12 game that will be massive in the long term for deciding what happens within the Big 12 championship, because Iowa State needs some help, but certainly the best way to get there is by knocking off Oklahoma State and then hoping that they drop another and winning out entirely after that if you're Iowa State. So this game has big implications, but I couldn't agree more. It's going to be won and lost in the trenches. Both quarterbacks aren't typically your guys that are going to go out there and just put the game on their back. Both guys are really intriguing to watch because they're both kind of game managers. This game, if you would have asked me a week and a half ago, I think I would have said I thought Oklahoma State takes this game fairly easily.
Yeah.
But I think Iowa State has improved in ways that I haven't seen from Oklahoma State. And I think Iowa State is really kind of in a better situation going into this game than Oklahoma State, because I think that they have more ways.
So that's the part. If I'm an Iowa State fan, that's the part that hurts the most. And that's the part that sucks for me the most, is the fact that for some odd reason, two things happened at the beginning of the season. One, we lose to Iowa. We can never get over that hump. And then the second thing is just the fact that we start off so sluggish, and then all of a sudden we turn it around and we put this season together. Last year, Iowa State had a legit chance to make the playoffs. But you're looking at them and saying, like, you know, why did you drop this game? Why did you drop that? It just didn't make a lot of sense. You get what I'm saying? But this year, it was just typical Iowa State. Let's go to Iowa, or let's play Iowa and let's try to beat them at their game instead of playing our game. Let's slow it down and let's play methodical and let's do this and do that. I'm like, no, you got a gunslinger back there. Let it rip. Play tempo. Like, come on, man. Like, you can't play Iowa's game. They're going to beat you at that every time. That's what they do. That's the reason why they have success against you. But you look at Iowa State and you're just like, man, you guys start off so sluggish, and then all of a sudden somehow you just turn it on mid-season. And so I already knew that was going to be a game of circle. Like I told you, the Baylor game I felt was that could be a potential trap game. I feel better about the game coming off a bye week for OU. But as far as Iowa State, you kind of know what's going to happen. And I feel like with Iowa State, especially where they're at this year, Brock Purdy's capable of doing that. I think when they come to Norman, I think you're not going to see them try to run tempo. I don't think that you're going to see them do anything differently than what they've done this year. They're going to run the same type of offensive scheme that Kansas State, West Virginia, Nebraska, they're going to run that same type of, let's slow this game down. Let's make them work. Breece Hall, you're going to have to be Superman today because you're going to get hit an awful lot. So you need to be ready.
Yeah.
But I agree with Jance on the fact that it definitely is going to be one in the trenches.
Absolutely.
And Breece Hall, somebody that I say, hey, you got to have a big game as well. You got to help Purdy out, because offensively, I'll say their wide receivers they've been less than stellar this year. They haven't really been that great. They haven't really given them that help. Kular, however you say the tight end's name. And then their outside guys on the perimeter, they haven't really done anything early in the season that's really helped Purdy out. So,
yeah, I completely agree. Now, Robert in the chat, he thinks that Oklahoma State's going to win it. Points out how Purdue was able to manage the Iowa game and how that relates to Iowa State. Here's the one thing I will say, Robert, because it's something we talk about when it comes to games such as the Red River Rivalry, the Iron Bowl, and especially in a game such as Iowa State. Rivalry games are always a little bit fickle, man. Like, there's a little bit of logic that we take into these rivalry games that we need to try and quell in the back of our head, because illogical things happen in these games. They just seem to always happen that way, right? It's very akin to a few years ago. I felt like it was very easy to predict the Red River Rivalry. Mm-hmm. I think Oklahoma came in there with a team that was far superior to the team Texas was coming in there with. And the game ended up being a shootout, to which Oklahoma won, but fourth quarter win, last minute win. I mean, the brilliant game. But that's just kind of the thing. What are you thinking, Jance, as far as Iowa State? Do you think that they're on their way to coming back, or is this who they are?
I think that this is who they are. I think
that's fair.
I think they are a football team that and I hear some echoing in the background. I don't know if it's me or not, but
it could be me. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, but I think that this is they are again, they're a physical football team. This is the type of team that we kind of expect them to be. We expected them to be a run the football, play defense type of mentality, because that's who they were last year. I think again, they're missing some explosiveness from the outside receiving positions. They really had to rely on guys like Allen and Kolar to be those particular guys. I mean, Hutchinson is a very good receiver. But the fact that more of these outside presences on the outside can't really step up that way, I don't know if it's a schematic issue, or again, maybe it's just that Iowa State has to get it going. But again, for the most part, they are going back to their identity, which is relying a lot on Breece Hall. But again, they need to open up more of the offense. I think that Brock Purdy, again, he's an NFL type of quarterback. He has a very, very strong arm. He can move around the pocket. He can see the field very, very well. They just got to get him going. They got to try to open up the offense a little bit. But as far as getting back to their defensive identity, I think we're starting to kind of see that more. So I think they're starting to get more to that realm. But I think again, this game is going to be interesting because just like I referenced earlier, this game is going to be won inside of the trenches, and both teams are extreme. These are probably two of the most physical teams in the Big 12 regarding in that specific category. So very interested to see what's going on. But as far as Iowa State as who they are and if they can get better, I think that this could be I think that this is who they are. We'll just have to see if they're going to open up more of the offense for Brock.
Yeah, it is really interesting to think about where he was on a lot of draft boards going into last year relative to where he was on draft boards going into this year. Because I was able to talk to somebody at the beginning of last year, at the beginning of this year. And I'm not going to say where amongst quarterbacks. I'll put it like this. When they said, where do you think Purdy ranks among quarterbacks? When they told me, I had to sit down with a pen and a paper to try and fill out how many quarterbacks it was between number one and where they had Purdy. Because I couldn't think of that many quarterbacks draft eligible to take over him. But that's where a team literally had him on their draft board, right? And they said, guy's got big ability, but it hasn't been there. So hopefully, if there was ever a game to turn it around, it would be this, right? It would be this game right here.
So, that old saying, hard work beats talent and all the rest of that. I think you're just seeing a case of the flip. I think you're seeing some more talented teams that are able to beat them. But to Robert Black's comment, I would say, and I hate to throw this word around so much, but fraud. I don't think there's anybody on this episode of your show, Ty, anybody on this panel right now that would just go out on a limb and say, yeah, Iowa is an elite team. Iowa is one of the top 5 teams.
They're good.
Yeah, they're a good football team.
They're good, but I don't think that they're not. I knew they were. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, I think that regardless, whoever comes out of that big Big Ten East side, as far as which I think we all think that Ohio State is going to be that team. Yeah. I think if Ohio State makes it to the Big Ten championship game, they beat Iowa probably by double digits. I stand by that.
They are who we thought they were. That's Iowa.
They are who we thought they were.
Yeah, they are who we thought they were.
Yeah, they play great defense. They can run the football. They manage the game well with their quarterbacks, but they're not. Again, they don't have an explosive offense. Iowa, they've been like that for over a decade. That's who they are. Yeah. That's the Wisconsins. That's the Northwesterns. That's what Michigan's trying to get out of that identity, but that's who Michigan's been under Jim Harbaugh. We all know they're not beating Ohio State or some of the other elite teams. They're good teams, but not elite.
Speaking of that game right there, that's a key game. And Jens, I'll ask you this since you brought them up. Do you smell an upset brewing for Michigan this week?
Oh, absolutely. Ooh. Absolutely.
With Northwestern has been every bit of terrible this year. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a game that could sneak up. Though. Huh?
Pat Fitzgerald's still a good coach.
He still can coach.
Yeah. I think as far as upsets, if we just want to look around the national scene of college football, Ty, if you don't mind, but I think as far as upsets, I guess you could call this an upset. I think Wisconsin is going to get Purdue. I think Northwestern has a chance.
That would be considered an upset.
I know, right? I think Northwestern has a chance to get Michigan. And
I like that one.
Who was another one that I was going to look at? I think that's about it. That UCLA at Oregon game is that?
That's going to be in the Rose Bowl. That's going to be in the Rose Bowl in UCLA territory.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one.
ABC game. Yeah.
That's one we're going to have to talk about. I hate to interrupt this, but I do want to give a quick plug before I forget, before we move past it. Roberto asks where he can find Jance. Jance Sports has a YouTube page. I'll let him tell y'all where it's located. That way y'all can go subscribe to him. He does fantastic content. Jance, tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, man. So yeah, you can find me on YouTube. Just type in Jance Sports. I'll be right there. You can again if you also want to follow my social medias, Jance716 on Twitter, Instagram, Jance Sports. You guys can find me there. Hit me up. You hit up the DMs. Ask me any type of questions. I'll be right there to answer any of your questions. Or again, we can have a conversation. Whatever. I'm always down for it.
So before we jump into this conversation of the upsets, because I really do want to talk about that, y'all name some games I really want to get into. I want to put one final, word on something Robert Black says. He says, well, I mean, Iowa made Iowa State look silly and Purdue made Iowa look silly. Purdue's offense just ran all over Iowa. Purdue. I get that. But the reason why those games don't work in football, these kind of logic games that we're attempting to play in this situation, is because that same logic game just led to a failing conclusion as it relates to Texas A&M, Mississippi State, Alabama. Mississippi State trounces A&M. Alabama goes in there, gets beat by A&M, and then Alabama lamb-blasts Mississippi State. So these games of because this team beat this team, it automatically equals this, they're not really rooted in reality a lot of the times, because football, like a fight, like boxing, like UFC, styles make matchups. Mm-hmm. And the variance in styles can be massive. The tiniest ones can be massive. This is a big physical game of chess where people are hitting each other, right? So tendencies do matter.
Also, at the end of that, hey, Purdue had a wide receiver out there, number 3. I mean, he was torching that Iowa.
David Bell.
Yeah,
David Bell.
Yeah, he was torching that secondary. I mean, my goodness, man, the routes he was running, I was like, wait a minute, who's this guy?
Mm-hmm.
He may have got him some money earned on that day. I was like, yeah, I was like, they're gonna be looking for you. I don't know if he's a sophomore or junior, whatever the case may be, but I was like, hey, man, that kid is out there having himself a game. So, yeah.
So we started talking about some of these upsets, and y'all listed Oregon, UCLA. Yeah. And I want to talk about that because, one, this game in and of itself is incredibly intriguing. I do think this has some upset capabilities to it. We're going to talk about why. But secondly, there is a question I want us to discuss on the back end of this. I want to go ahead and put it out there so that chat holds me accountable in getting around to this question, and so that you two hold me accountable because I've been known to ramble. The question I want to ask after we discuss this is, what is the better job, LSU or USC, right? So I do want to get into that after we talk about this. But this Oregon-UCLA game, what are we thinking here? Because UCLA has been exceptional running the football this year. Yeah. I mean, really high quality.
Jance, I'll let you go.
Okay. This game is actually more even than I think what people kind of give it credit for, because both teams, again, established the run game. That's their top priority. Of course, Oregon has more of a dynamic quarterback, that can run the football, but again, his passing ability has not been the best. He's been inconsistent when it comes to reading the field, really going through his progressions a little bit there. But Oregon they've dealt with the injury plague. They've missed 3 inside linebackers. Justin Flo being out was a huge blow for them in the first game. I'm not too sure if Kayvon Thibodeau is going to be back for this particular game, but they've clearly missed that presence on the outside edge because they just don't have that same explosiveness rushing the quarterback compared to what they had with Kayvon Thibodeau in the past. So, I think for UCLA, I think that they've done a really good job with establishing senior leadership on this football team. This is one of the most experienced teams you're ever going to see in college football. You can tell they play with a certain motivation, a certain edge to them. Again, next year, I think they're going to be detrimented with the loss of talent they have today. But still, they've gotten, again, players like Zach Charbonnet, who's been that bully running the football. Has been absolutely exceptional for the UCLA Bruins. The fact that, again, their tight ends are incredible. They can block. They can catch the football. They pose a threat as far as matchups against safeties and certain linebackers. They're that certain mismatch there that they really often use. And their offensive line has been extremely physical as well. So this is going to be a game very similar to versus Oregon versus Stanford, where styles will make matchups. And Oregon, who has been, again, detrimented by injuries, UCLA can take advantage of that and pound the football, manage the game well, really not force self-inflicted errors. And I think if they can do that, UCLA has a phenomenal shot at beating Oregon because they're not invincible in this Pac-12. If there's UCLA is arguably the second best team in this conference. So I think that I really wouldn't even call this an upset if UCLA gets the dub here, but this is a matchup where stylistically UCLA might have an advantage over.
It's funny how far they've came since that. So from where they're from, where they started at, I guess you could say, because they literally started at the bottom. Like Chip Kelly, it was surprising. It was almost like it was laughable how they started out because you think Chip Kelly would get them right in maybe 2 years. No, it took till now. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and give my X factors for the game again. And I'm going to go with the quarterback room again. I think Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he's going to have to make plays. He's going to have to play just like he has this year. He's got 13 touchdowns on the year, 2 interceptions. And I think we all can concur that in the past, he's been every bit short of that right there. So Anthony Brown, I kind of disagree with Jance a little bit on that because I don't think Anthony Brown is as dynamic as we think he is because he has not shown any of that this year. I think that if he was actually willing to be a little bit more mobile than what he has been, I think that they would probably be undefeated right now because losing at Stanford always has a great defense, but it's like every other year they'll have a quarterback who can actually run the system, and then they'll just have a guy back there. They'll just have a guy who's a good game manager who's solid. But I think Anthony Brown has kind of been I don't even think it's the defense necessarily. I think it's just kind of Anthony Brown. As he goes, they go. So Oregon, I'm interested to see how they go up against UCLA. They're missing their top running back. He's out for the year. Their backup, he's pretty darn good, but I don't know. Something tells me that Oregon should win this game, but I think UCLA has all the hype, and I think they have the momentum. I think they're going to be up for a game like this, and definitely with Chardonnay running the ball like he has. That's
97 yards on the year.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing about this game to me is when we look at the Oregon defense, Jance pointed this out, but for those of you that love college football, when we're thinking about some of the most exciting, intriguing defensive players in college football, I mean, I don't think that you can have a list that's wrong that includes the names Noah Sewell, Justin Flo, Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yeah.
And they're all three on that Oregon defense. Noah Sewell, for those of you that haven't gotten the opportunity to watch that young man, you need to. Because he looks like a bowling ball that runs a 4.3 and is fantastic, right? That young man is so athletic.
Is Justin Flo out for the year?
He's out for the year. He was out for the year. He's out for the year. He I think he broke his foot, either the foot or I think a ACL, but I think it was the first game of the year.
First game of the year. It was on kickoff too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and he was set to play middle linebacker, but also on the kickoff duty, and just boom.
Yep. Had like 12 tackles that game. Was dominating. Was just incredible, absolutely incredible. Then boom, that had to happen to him. They've been destroyed. They've been destroyed though at the inside linebacking position. The Ohio State game, they lost around 3 players in that particular game. It's been not the best year when it comes to dealing with those sort of injuries. But Oregon, they've recruited well. They've recruited extremely well over there in the West Coast. You were able to kind of see their talent, but at the same time, again, when you're playing a team like UCLA that has that much senior leadership on that football team, that has that much experience, it's kind of hard to, especially when you're playing in the Rose Bowl in a pumped up environment where the winner of this game could potentially be the number 1 team in the Pac-12. UCLA has a big advantage going into this.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think UCLA can get this one. Another one y'all talked about, Michigan, Northwestern. Now, I have been vocally critical of Jim Harbaugh for quite some time, right? I think people kind of know by now. I'm not the biggest Harbaugh fan. I think he's a brilliant football mind. Right? I think he's a brilliant football mind. But at the same time, I think that sometimes Harbaugh tries to be relatable. You remember that meme? What is it? forget his name. He plays in Miss Easy, but it's when he goes into the school with the skateboard on his back and he says, "Hello there, fellow kids." Like, do y'all know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
No? Okay. Well, you do. Okay, good. That's Harbaugh to me, right? Like, he tries so hard to be cool and relatable and a kid, and it's almost off-putting. I say that, and I bring that to your attention because of this. A few years ago, there was a story about a recruit that was a 5-star offensive lineman, big-time recruit. Alabama wanted him. Jance, the name escapes me right now, but when I tell this story, you might remember the name, so if you do, let me know.
Okay.
He ended up decommitting from Alabama because at the time when he had originally committed to Alabama, he went to give Nick Saban a hug, and Saban shook his hand instead. And the young man said, like, he grew up in a very close-knit family environment, and that sort of thing was important to him. And some people were saying that's ridiculous. And what I said to those people is, you're going away for multiple years to be in an environment that you're not comfortable with. If something like that matters to you, good on you for identifying it and finding what matters. He ended up taking a trip, or having Jim Harbaugh take a trip to see him. Jim Harbaugh comes to his house for a visit. Jim Harbaugh, when he walks into the house, has cleats on and is wearing football cleats inside this young man's house and would not take them off, even though the mom had asked him to take them off. It's stuff like that I just am like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're goofy. And like, that's not. So
he's a goofy guy. I'll admit that, because those thrift store Dockers that he wear, I'm just like, come on. But I digress. But no, on a serious note, though, I think when you look at Harbaugh, his biggest problems of honestly, it hasn't been the recruiting. I think it's really been his assistant coaches. He comes from he's old school. He was an old school guy. It's just like Saban was a bunch of years ago. He was hesitant to really, let's embrace this whole spread concept. Let's embrace this or whatnot. And so now you're seeing those concepts being embraced by Harbaugh, and is actually helping his team out a lot more. I think obviously James Franklin and Jim Harbaugh, they knew something that we all didn't know, because obviously their teams are way better than what they were last year in the COVID year. So yeah, I'll give them that. However,
absolutely respect there.
Outside of a team like, and I guess you could put in the Big Ten wise, I think you could put Iowa in there, but Ohio State, Iowa, Michigan State, Wisconsin, those are the only teams in the Big Ten in my mind that have been battle tested. And when you look at a team like Michigan, they've been winning, but when you look at their schedule, you're just like, okay, well, who have you played? And I know a lot of people are like, yeah, this may be the year that Michigan finally beats Ohio State. And I'm like, no.
Ohio State's improving.
Ohio State's surging. I wouldn't even say improving. They're surging. They're surging.
Yeah, and a lot of people wrote them off really early, and they haven't. Yeah. I feel like people haven't been watching Ohio State because they felt like they were done. That's the wrong move.
Well, I think what you finally saw. I think people haven't taken a step back to actually compare the move. But if you look at OU, this is where you can compare OU and Ohio State. They made a decision to go ahead and let's run with this true freshman who is going to be our guy. Okay? Because Travion Henderson is exception. If he's not the best running back in the nation, then he's up there. He's got to be in one of your top 10.
He's unbelievable.
Yeah. So you're looking at him and Caleb Williams and say, okay, those teams made a decision and say, you know what? We're going with the freshman. We're going with the freshman in this situation.
Matt, I hear you, but this is where I think we need to be very careful with this, because you're right? Who has Ohio State played anyone ranked? Maybe they haven't played somebody that we deem to be incredible, but if we look at the nuance of why things happen, yeah, they did get beat by Oregon. Absolutely. So when we look at that, right, we need to look at why things are happening and the hows, because I think in football we have this tendency to look at just the result and not the reason things ended up that way. But here's why I bring that, Matt, because just saying, oh, well, we don't feel like they've played anybody, that leads to a slippery slope of argumentation. presenting to me that is the mantle in which we are holding all of our arguments on. What I'm going to retort is then you're opening up your own quarterback to be questioned in his ability because he hasn't played a defense that ranks within the top 100 of college football. So now you're placing your arguments on a mantle that is self-deprecating. It's going to collapse in and of itself because we're not looking at the nuance, the why are things happening that way. Mm-hmm. But like I said, that we don't question how good Caleb is because it's very obvious. I don't need to see him play a top 3 defense to see that's a very talented young man. That's why I have a very hard time with that argument.
I'm used to this conversation every year. OU plays in the Big 12. They never play anybody. So
yeah, it's not an argument that I would cling to.
Yeah.
So,
I think you can say that about pretty much everybody. I mean, I think if you really take things into context, like I'll just give you an example. You look at the Georgia Bulldogs. Yes, they played a lot of ranked opponents, and their defense has been absolutely stellar. But who was the best passing offense they played against? Arkansas?
Yeah.
Kentucky. I mean, Clemson has not really been good. Auburn's not known for their passing type of offense. So I think, again, this is more of just styles, right? Styles when it comes to those matchups, we really need to take things into account there. I mean, again, anyone can get beat. Anyone with the right stylistic matchup can give a team problems. So I don't really like to use the argument of, who have they played? Because again, you can legit make the argument about pretty much everybody.
Yeah, it's an argument. That's why I always say I'm so big into nuance. I'm so big into why things happen. And that's why, even though I still have a long ways to go, I'm such a big film guy because that's where I think most of the answers lie is within film. I love the advanced metrics. I love the stats. Yeah. But to me, without the film, those stats are meaningless because we don't know why those stats are the way they are.
So I was just going to say, just to kind of end that point right there, who you guys got in that UCLA Oregon game? I got UCLA. I got UCLA winning this game 24-17. Throw that out there.
I got UCLA. I'll say I'll have it closer. I'll say 21-17.
I think UCLA is going to blow them out 38-20.
I love it.
I think 38-20. I think Oregon is just they're going down a trend that's not particularly good right now. And I think with the injury bug that's plaguing them, they just lost their star running back. You have to rely on Travis Dye, who is an all-purpose back, but he's not the clear-cut number one type of back there. Their offensive line is getting riddled with injuries. I think UCLA is, even though they're 5-2, arguably the second best team in the Pac-12. They're playing at home. The crowd, I mean, they've made a bunch of motivational videos this particular week, so the fans are hyped up for it. They're making noise on Twitter. I think UCLA has a ton of energy right now. I think they're going to win this game huge.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Now, what are you thinking on that Northwestern Michigan game? Is this a chance for Harbaugh to get upset?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Fitzgerald has, if you look at it in the past, he's had a lot of good games against Jim Harbaugh. He's kind of figured out a way how to compete against the Michigan Wolverines. And, Northwestern, again, they're not as good, in my opinion, as they were last year. But again, this is more of a stylistic type of matchup. This is more of a who is going to win, particularly in the trenches. And we've seen Rutgers give Michigan problems. Like Rutgers was holding their own in the interior against the more talented Michigan offensive line that should just be absolutely just blowing people off the field. And a lot of people like to say that Michigan's offense has evolved. I have to kind of disagree with that. I think they're trying to get out that. I think it's more of a classic pro style typical type of offense, and they're really trying to get out of that. But again, Michigan has an identity, and that's to hand the football off, let the quarterback take care of the football. So we all know Haskins is going to get the majority of the carries. We all know Corum is going to get heavily involved in your offense. And Northwestern has played well against good running football teams. They know how to play well against the run. It's really just the passing offenses that they've kind of had a little bit of a struggle with. But with Michigan, they got some explosiveness. They got some talented skill position players. But Pat Fitzgerald, I think, is going to have a game plan. He's going to get these players motivated. I think also, too, it's a 12 o'clock game. It's 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I
Yep.
think that definitely plays a huge factor into this. Who's going to wake up early? Who's going to be the team that's simply going to say, I'm ready to just, go out there and kick some tail out there today. So I think Northwestern has a great shot of upsetting Michigan.
I'm going to go with Michigan. I know they're minus 23.5. I'm going to say minus 14. I think Michigan will take care of this game. Let me ask you guys one more question, and we'll end it here with the upsets. How do you guys? They're 1-5, but how do you guys feel about Cincinnati traveling to play Navy?
Oof.
I was looking at that game when you said about upsets earlier, and I was scrolling through because right next to where I have us pulled up, I have ESPN pulled up.
Yeah.
That way I can just kind of keep up with games, things like that. We just talked about styles, right? We just talked about styles and how important styles are. And now they're going up against a stylistic matchup that you don't see every day. That's tough. It is always tough to play these schools that have these styles that you just don't see every day. So look, it's a real one. I think it's a very low possibility that Cincinnati gets upset, but that's a very real opportunity. I agree.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this right here. Cincinnati, there's one game that we all should circle. November 20th. Okay. SMU comes to town. I think Cincinnati will run the table, and I think that on let me see where that game is actually at. That game is at Cincinnati. I'm still going to take SMU. I think Mordecai gets the job done against them. I think the way that they're playing and as loose with the ball as he is, as far as just being a gunslinger back there, I think they're going to challenge that defense, that Cincy defense. I think that it'll be one. If that defensive line can get pressure on Mordecai, I think that they'll come out victorious. But if they can't, it's gonna be a long day. It's gonna come down to the end. So I've circled that game and talking about that game and harping on that game for the longest. And I really do think that if Cincinnati doesn't struggle tomorrow or any other time, I think that you will see them struggle on November 20th, because I think SMU is good enough to do the impossible.
Yeah, SMU was great last year.
Yeah.
Right? Like SMU has been trending in this direction for a while. I say great, a little bit facetious with the use of great, but I think y'all get my point. That's going to be really interesting to see. Now, I do want to ask this question right here. I want to circle back to it. Jance, I'll start with you. What is the most desirable job out of USC and LSU?
I think LSU, only because that state is heavily relied upon football. That is a football state, and if you look at some LSU, for a state that is, if you look at the size of their map, that's extremely small compared to California, they have some of the most talented football programs and some of the most talented football players I have ever seen. I mean, you look at University Lab, Southern Lab, Etna Carr. I mean, these programs are elite, and they keep forming these elite players. It's incredible. But yeah, that state is more desirable when it comes to football. I think if you look at a big market, I mean, California is a huge market, but is football the number one priority in that state compared to what we've seen from LSU, in the state of Louisiana? So I think that getting a job there at the state of Louisiana, you're going to get the expectations compared to what you're going to be facing at USC are going to be it's going to be extremely high. So that job, very similar to Texas, or very similar to if you get a job at the University of Oklahoma or the University of Alabama, where football is the number one key priority there. It's it's the job where you're going to get the most pressure. USC, of course, huge brand market, but LSU is probably, in my opinion, the most desirable job.
Yeah, what do you think?
So here's the crossroads that you're at. Okay, if you're James Franklin, if you're even Joe Brady, somebody like Joe Brady, or
please God no,
let's say Mel Tucker, somebody like that, okay, who they've all been tied to this job. I think the first thing you're thinking, if LSU is obviously the better choice, you're in the SEC, you're gonna have more money, you're gonna have more lenient recruiting tools, if you get what I'm saying. But you're with LSU. Here's the thing: you're looking at that team and you're saying, okay, is Max Johnson my guy? Is he my guy? Or do I need to go get a quarterback? Because you pretty much say, okay, it's pretty much plug and play. Let me go get my guy. Let me go recruit my guy that I want. Let me go get a really, really good quarterback who can run the system that I want to run. And I think I'll be competitive. I think I'll be better than competitive. I think I'll have a chance to beat Alabama, to beat Georgia, to beat Florida, to beat all those teams.
Easy on the first one.
Okay. So, but I think that obviously that's the job right there. And I think that you have a little bit more job security at a LSU than you would at a USC, because USC they're hungry. They're starving. I mean, they want to be back at the top of the hill. They want to be, they're a prima donna right now that's saying, you guys have not paid us any attention. We don't, you guys don't even care about us anymore. We're like, you're not that guy, pal. You're just not anymore. Reggie Bush is not walking through that door. Matt Leinert's not walking through that door. Mike Williams is not walking through that door anymore. And you're looking at them and saying they have guys, but I guess what I mean by the crossroads is that you have a hell of a job that you can say, look, I can go and compete. I can be competitive. I can finish 9-3, finish 10-2. Hell, I could probably go win a national championship as is with that team right now. I just need to go and put more structure and get my guys in there, my assistants, and then more of my players like me guys that add continuity to it. But in my opinion, I think that when you look at the USC job, you're saying, damn, that could be an easy route to the college football playoff. Because when you look at them, you're saying, okay, I get past Stanford, I get past Notre Dame, I get past a Oregon that I might not even have. Are they in the same division or are they not?
I don't think they're in the same division. They just would play in the championship game. Jans, am I correct in that?
I know they're in the north. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Oregon's north, USC south.
Yeah,
that's 100%.
USC south. Yeah.
So you're looking at Oregon. You're saying, okay, I'll have to meet like Oregon or a Utah, and if I don't play them in the season, I'll have to probably meet them in the championship game. But then you're looking at like a UCLA and all those teams. You're saying, okay, this is great what you're doing, but what happens next year when you lose all these super seniors and you got to start from scratch? You get what I'm saying? So
yeah.
I kind of think that you have to toss it up and say that. But just to answer your question directly, I'll go LSU. That's the better job. Mm-hmm. Larger talent pool, larger pipelines that you're going to have. Kids still want to come and play for LSU. As long as you have Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Jefferson, OBJ, Juice Landry, guys like that cutting it up in the NFL, they make it cool to be a football player. You know?
I could just
go ahead.
Okay, now if I just want to add on something real quick. I think for USC, and I think that it's a lot harder to coach at USC only because for LSU, you have the state of Louisiana as your recruiting background. You have a fence already there because of the loyalty. Like you look at a kid like Walker Howard, who's a 5-star, who just said, "Listen, I'm staying at LSU because my father played at LSU. My best friend and Jack Bach is at LSU." So you have a lot more loyalty and a lot more kids that grew up to the culture of Louisiana football. But then when you look at the state of California, you look at all these kids, from the top programs like Mater Dei, Servite, St. John Bosco, Corona Centennial. Like all these kids are going elsewhere, going to the South, going to the East, going to the Midwest. So I don't think that there's any loyalty in the state of California. So when you're there, you're automatically your expectation is for you to get back to the top 5 because USC used to be a top 5 program in recruiting, and now they can barely even touch the top 25 anymore. So I think it's a lot harder getting kids there, and then of course establishing a winning culture there.
USC is a lot like Texas right now. Yeah. There's a lot of kids in Texas who will tell you like UT is like down the street from me, but I'm not going there. Like I don't want to go there. If it's not like A&M or somewhere else, then no, I'm gonna go elsewhere and play. They're not developing me. I want to be developed. I actually want to be challenged. I want to be a part of a winning culture.
The Brockermeyer twins.
Yeah,
that's their exact quote when they chose Bama over Texas. Development.
Yeah, because you're looking and you're saying that, okay, I know Drake London's gonna go and do big and bad things in the NFL. Michael Pittman's doing big and bad things in the NFL. But I mean, that's great for them. But at my position, defensively and offensive line wise, and they have a couple of running backs in the league, but you just saying you're not putting out that many guys. You're not having a lot of feature guys go. So why am I as a 5-star going to go there? You get what I'm saying? And I know they picked it up with their recruiting, but I'm just saying that it's a mess up there. I don't think they ever truly recovered from all those infractions that they got years ago, where they had a bunch of scholarship. They lost a lot of scholarships and they just got into a bunch of trouble. It's just, I don't know. It's funny because ever since Matt Barkley left, it's like, it's just been up and down, up and down, up and down. So I don't know. USC is kind of a mystery to me, but when I think about that job, I'm like, it's a no-brainer to me. I think James Franklin would be perfect for a USC. Yeah.
That's hard to argue.
I agree.
He's not an LSU guy. He's a SoCal guy.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I think is so interesting about this is when you look at the almost parameters about what these hires mean. First and foremost, if you're going to LSU, you're in the situation where you have to realize you're going up against Saban, right? Every single year, directly. You're going up against Saban. That's not easy. Plus, I get it, right? There's a lot of people that aren't SEC fans that don't think that the SEC is a competitive league, right? I get that all the time, saying SEC is overhyped. And this is what I will say, because there's a lot of Oklahoma fans in here right now. In 2024 or 2025, when y'all are in the SEC, you're going to be using the arguments you now fight against. When Oklahoma State is saying, hey, well, why would you get in the playoffs? You're going to say, well, we beat this team, this team, this team, this team. Y'all don't play these teams. You don't. That's tough. The SEC is absolutely a gauntlet, right? Like, there's a reason where even when I talked to some of my buddies who played for TCU, and I was just like, what's it like playing the Big 12? They're like, hey, it's a lot better than people think. It's a great league. It's a brilliant league. Then I asked him, what was it like playing those SEC schools? He's like, it's every bit as brilliant. He's like, but they're big, they're strong, they're fast, and he's like, it's different. So LSU, you're in such a competitive environment going up against Nick Saban, the expectation's so high, but the recruiting area is, I don't think there's a much better area in the nation for recruiting than Louisiana. And then in the South, when you look at where your conference extends to, you're in Texas, you're in Florida, right? You're everywhere. For USC, you look at it, and to your point, they're starving for somebody. They're absolutely starving for somebody to go and do something, right? And while you think about it, it may be easy to say, okay, well, you go to USC because they don't have Nick Saban in conference. The path to college football playoffs is easier. At the end of the day, I think both of you bring up a great point. Is football the most important thing there?
Yeah.
And the answer is no, it's not. I'm not saying it's the least important thing. I'm not contending that they don't care. I'm contending that in Louisiana, in Alabama, in Texas, in Oklahoma, college football just means more. It just does. Yes. That's just the simple reality of this, right? That's just the simple reality of this. So I have to completely agree. I think that the job that you would want is the LSU job, but you have got to be understanding of what it is you're walking into. Mm-hmm. It is going to be a tough job.
I think looking at the LSU job, you got to see what Mel Tucker would say, but I think your first call has to, I think out of respect or at least just being courteous, your first call has to be Joe Brady. I mean, he's the mastermind behind that offensive explosion.
No, you heard Coach Orgeron. He didn't have anything to do with it. It was Nussmeier and Scott Linehan.
Now they say that, but yeah, I mean they say that. Well, come on, man. I mean Joe Brady. I don't know. It would be funny to see him come back because they found success with the Panthers. So I don't know, and I don't think you're going to get Matt Rule to come back for a job like that, especially when he's not even close to being on the hot seat right now. I think they're in a prime position. I think they're actually off to a better start than everybody else thought they would be. Held probably their own GM and owner, but I think Mel Tucker. I saw something on Instagram the other day. They had top 10 coaches, and somebody had Tom Herman on the list of coaches that would be perfect for LSU. And I was like, look, if you put Tom Herman on the list for a USC, I'd be like, yeah, okay, I get it.
I'd be much more accepting of USC than LSU.
Yeah, but LSU, I was like, nah, no.
Yeah, I'd be much more accepting of USC than LSU. Absolutely.
I mean, Jess, who do you think would be a great fit? Give me your top 3 guys for the LSU job.
I think the number one guy on my list, and I don't know, this is probably the most unlikely thing to happen, but the most perfect person to take that job is Dave Aranda. I think he is the perfect guy because Ed Orgeron, he's always said it. Dave Aranda was the heart and soul of that 2019 LSU football team because all of the players, all of the coaches had Dave Aranda's respect. Dave Aranda is an alpha dog. He's a dude that demands excellence. He's a dude that, not saying he's Nick Saban, but if you want an example of a coach, he's more in that Kirby Smart league where he's not James Franklin. He's not, like you can tell he's perfect for Southern Cal and some of these other, universities. But when it comes to SEC football, a guy that demands excellence, a guy that's an alpha dog, that's more of a father figure, more of a fatherhead, head of the table. That's Dave Aranda, 100%.
He makes the most sense, honestly.
That's a great name.
And I think that Dave Aranda will be willing to leave Baylor, even with everything that the atmosphere that he has going down there now. I think he'd be willing to go back to LSU. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I mean, I kind of feel like between him and Joe Brady, I'm like, that's where your success lies.
He wanted to stay. He wanted to stay at LSU. He wanted to stay so badly, but the problem was that him and his relationship with Ed Orgeron was a mess. They did not click from the time that Dave Aranda even got there. They just kept butting heads because it was two alpha male type of personalities just clashing at each other. He wanted to stay at LSU,
and they made the wrong choice.
Yeah, Ed Orgeron is a great
rah.
Yeah. I'll leave it there. Yeah.
He's a rah.
That's pretty much what he is.
Like, I'm not trying to say he's not a great coach, right? He won a national championship. It is so difficult to win a national championship, right? Even if you hit lightning in a bottle, you still have to capitalize. And he did. So I will always give credit in that regard. But at the same time, I mean, you just listen to what some of his players said. I think the most damning thing I ever heard come out of LSU, at least during the Ed Orgeron stint there, was when the social justice marches were happening. You see Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin walking with his team, Kirby Smart walking with his team, Nick Saban walking with his team. You go to LSU, and LSU had a organized march, and they didn't even tell their coach. Ed Orgeron shows up to practice, and there are 5 dudes sitting on the practice field, and he said, "Where is everybody?" And they said, "We're having a march." He got called to the dean's office because his players wanted to talk to him with the dean. You didn't have that anywhere else.
No.
That, to me, was showing these players don't look at you in the same light that Nick Saban is viewed, that Kirby is viewed, that Lane Kiffin is viewed. That was it to me. That was the beginning of the end for Coach O for me. Was that event?
That's kind of I haven't heard that story. That's hard to believe because at first glance you thought everybody loved Coach O, but then again, whenever you're winning, everything, all the holes in the system are like they're
they do love Coach O.
Yeah.
There's an interesting quote because last year this isn't going to get political. This is just facts. Right? This is just facts.
Yeah.
Because someone's going to say we're getting political. We're just stating what happened. Coach O went on Fox News.
Oh, boy.
And said his bit. K'Lavon Chason got on Twitter and said, "Guys, he's just a football coach. I love the guy, but he's a football coach." If that doesn't say, hey, we like this guy when he's talking football, that's where we respect this guy, I don't know what does.
Yeah.
Like, that was just so obvious to me. So obvious to me.
No, I get it. It's crazy. It's like bittersweet how this story is going to end with LSU.
It's wild.
we're hearing more stuff about, Ed Orgeron, about, him. Well, first you had him with his taking photos in bed with his girlfriend, which again, that's his private life. We understand that, but you don't need. I mean, you're a head coach representing one of the biggest universities when it comes to football, and that's just a bad representation. And then again, you're cussing fans out on the beach. Then you're bringing different girlfriends to practices, like interfering with the practices. Like it's like, what are you doing?
He was letting the girlfriend's kids participate in drills.
In the practices. Like, what?
This is a real thing, bro. Like, this is wild.
I haven't heard any of these stories,
football.
but
oh my goodness,
damn, Dougie, that Urban Meyer-esque.
I don't even know that Urban did something like this. Like, it's everything, right? Jance, you are so correct in what you're saying, because isn't it just the same as when he's walking in for the UCLA game this year and he's talking mess to the fans saying, yeah, you bring that sissy blue shirt down here, as he's the guy walking in with 15 police officers surrounding him saying, yeah, you come down here. And then you get your butt kicked.
Then you're cussing fans out on the beach. It's like, what? Oh, man.
Hey, y'all hit that like button real quick, because Ty has went from Ty Hayes around the table sports to Jerry Springer. This boy bringing out everything.
God,
I've never seen anything like it. And we're hearing we're getting more developments by the day as stuff is going on. Like, you got players going into the transfer portal, and normally you'll see coaches try to talk to their players and like, hey, trying to convince their players to stay out of it. And then Ed Orgeron's like, nope, they want to go in, let them go in. I'm out. I'm not gonna be here.
Now, I know that he's eligible for the draft, but Jesus, man, if Eli Ricks comes into the transfer portal,
he's not eligible for the draft. He's got one more year.
He's a sophomore.
Oh, really?
Stingley's eligible. Stingley's gone.
Oh, he's gone.
Stingley's gone. Stingley's probably not even going to play the rest of the season. I wouldn't even be surprised if he opted out. But Eli Ricks, holla at your boy.
That's your boy.
Keyshawn Butte, holla Alabama, please. I need you to get in the transfer portal and get out of there, please. Please.
Hey, Baum says it right here, right? Like, to a degree. And I think it's so important you put the to a degree, because that's what really takes this over the edge in being true. LSU has always been a good program. They have the ability to be good because of the talent they have in state. But what Coach Saban installed there and what Coach Les Miles took over was something very good. And Les Miles had a really good run. At a lot of other institutions, he would not have been fired for his run. But LSU's different. Coach O inherited something that was very good. He had a very good staff. And in a lot of ways, it does track back to that. But that gets me on to something else we need to talk about, because Alabama and Nick's, their historic rival in Tennessee this week. It hasn't been a rivalry for quite some time. Rocky Top has gotten just absolutely annihilated by Alabama, and Alabama's looking to continue playing joyless murder ball. Jance is the other Alabama fan in here. What are you thinking about the matchup this week?
Well, it's a very interesting one against the Musketeers. I want to see. I want to see. Well, first of all, is Hooker playing in this game for Tennessee? I know he was hurt really badly. Is he playing?
Oh, I don't know. I think last time I checked, it was questionable. Let me see.
Well, if he's playing in this particular game, I think Tennessee can give Alabama a sort of game. I think that their talent has really showed off. I think they've played really, really, really good defensively. I mean, that game against Ole Miss, even though Matt Corral
Hooker's
rushed over
playing.
100, he's playing. Okay, so that's good for Tennessee. So yeah, even though Tennessee, Matt Corral, he rushed for over 130 something yards. They played. That was one of the best games I think I've ever seen a defense play against Matt Corral and that particular offense, which gives defenses fits. They did a really good job getting pressure. The crowd, 5,000 fans, were able to get this team to the game, and obviously until the mustard and the water bottle started just to come on the football field. But yeah, I think that Tennessee is going to come into this game a little bit more motivated than I think what people kind of give them credit for. I think that this is a very, very talented football team that I think is tired of getting their butts kicked by the University of Alabama. And I think the problem going into this game is that Alabama, they're literally fighting for their life, because they know that if they afford one more loss, if they afford one more bad performance, they might not even their season is probably going to be done. So I think that offensively, Defensively, I think this team for Alabama is going to come out swinging. I think Tennessee is going to. I think this is going to be a great football game, at least in the first half. I think the second half comes around. I think Bama will push this team absolutely around. I think they're going to ragdoll them. But I would not be shocked at all if the first half is a lot closer than what people kind of give Tennessee credit for.
Look, I don't disagree, right? I think Tennessee has actually been a little bit of a happy surprise this year, if we're being honest, right? Like maybe not to us, Jance, as Alabama fans, but as college football fans. I think Tennessee's been a little bit of a happy surprise, especially when you look at the exodus they had of the transfer portal last year. And especially when you look at they were a team doing the real-life embodiment of Happy Meals. First off, that was incredible. Chris, did you ever hear that story of how they got caught up? Tennessee?
No.
So when these recruits were coming on visits, they would give them McDonald's to eat for lunch with cash in the McDonald's bags. And I've always said that's the real definition of a Happy Meal because, hey, I'd be happy. Yeah. I think we're going to see something very akin to the first series against Mississippi State, where Tennessee's scripted plays are going to be somewhat successful against Alabama's defense. Adjustments will be made, and boom. Alabama will come out, do what they do. But they cannot overlook this Tennessee team because this Tennessee team has been more impressive than many expected. I'm not going to say they've been world-beating. They haven't. Bama should take care of this Tennessee team. But styles make fights. Styles make games, right? And I get it. It's easy to say because Bama beat up on Ole Miss, they should destroy Tennessee because Ole Miss just beat Tennessee. Styles make games. What are you thinking about this one, Chris?
I think you can overlook them. You can go ahead and start planning for the next game and next week. I'm not worried about what Tennessee has planned for Alabama.
Yep.
Maybe I've been listening to Coach Saban too much.
Yeah, no, I mean, here's the thing. The only interesting thing to me about this game, I'm going to be totally honest with you. The only thing that interests me in this game is, will somebody in that student section or the crowd throw a golf ball at Nick Saban? Nick Saban's not Lane Kiffin. He'll go into the stands. So I'm going to be looking for that. But other than that, as far as what's going on.
Yeah, y'all seen my boy Nick Saban on that Aflac commercial covering that duck?
That's what I'm saying. But as far as I'm concerned with whatever is going on the field, I'm not really concerned because Tennessee is like sporadic. They're extremely sporadic out there on the field. Like, like one drive they look like world beaters. Then the next three is punt, turnover, punt, turnover, punt, touchdown, punt, turnover. So they have a lot. They have highs during the game and they have a lot of lows. But I don't think this is going to be a game where you're sitting here thinking that I believe that what time is the game being played? Is it 6:30?
6:30 or 5:30. I'm not sure because I didn't look to see whether it was listed in Eastern or Central. Let me check.
I think it might be 2:30 Central. Because I'm in the East, so probably 3:30 Eastern Standard, 2:30.
Where's it being played at this week?
It's 6 p.m.
Oh, 6 p.m. Okay.
6 p.m. It's at Bama.
It's at Bama.
Yeah.
Bryant-Denny.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's Bama will probably win like 57-14, something like that.
And I
would just take down to make it 14 will probably come late. I'm not worried about that game.
Robert Black says he usually spells it Satan, but he's learning to like him more as the years go by. Look, this is what I'll say about Nick Saban. When you get to a point of truly having this real deep love for college football, you get this deep appreciation for Nick Saban. On the wall behind me, I have a book detailing Nick Saban, his early years, his come up, his coaching tree. The man embodies a lot of what college football could be, right? I mean, he does a lot of things. He's been very positive for the sport. He does a lot behind closed doors that a lot of people don't know about positively for the sport. And I think the one thing I'll always say about Saban, there's this kind of notion that he's this grumpy guy. And he is, right? He's Saban. He's earned the right to be grumpy. But I always point people back to that Musim Muhammad story. It's a great one. When he was at Michigan State and Musim Muhammad gets in trouble. And everybody's saying, hey, this kid doesn't need to be on the team. He needs to be kicked off the team. And Saban never kicked that young man off the team. Muhsin Muhammad went on to have a successful career at Michigan State, went on to have a successful career in the NFL. I forget how many kids he ended up having, but some of his kids ended up doing very well in life as well. And one of his kids, if I'm not mistaken, graduated very highly from Princeton or some Ivy League. Jance, you might remember exactly in the rant where he said
Princeton.
But I just remember it was some great college.
Yeah, it was Princeton.
Muhsin Muhammad's kid.
Mm-hmm.
That's Saban, right? Like he understands that this is college football. There's a path to the NFL. That's why he's the best developer of talent in the league. When you look at the rate of 5 stars being developed, anywhere else in the nation, it is 20%. You have a 20% chance of sending a 5-star to the NFL draft in the first round. At Alabama, it's 54%, right? He just does this. So Saban has done so much for college football, and he's just a very interesting individual. Incredibly interesting. But kind of moving it back, Jance, I want to hear from you, because one of the things when I've looked at Tennessee that they have really struggled with is protecting their quarterback. And Will Anderson is coming off of a week where he was undeniable. What do you think we're looking at for Will Anderson this week and the Alabama pass rush as a whole?
Well, I think Will Anderson's going to have a dominant performance. I think that he's going to get around maybe 2 or 3 sacks this particular game. They've struggled at the tackle position for Tennessee. One of Tennessee's key strong points has been actually in the interior. They're one of the best. I actually think Tennessee's going to run the football more than I think what people kind of expect them to do. I think
number 4 in the nation, by the way.
Yeah, they have right close to 2,000 yards rushing already. They got 4 running backs that have over 5.6 yards per carry, which is absolutely impressive. And what has been Alabama's kind of Achilles heel? It's been the running game. And it's been in that certain area. Will Anderson, we all know he's the alpha male, even though he's a sophomore. He's the alpha male. He's the guy that's going to constantly get after the quarterback. My question is, I want to see other players get more involved in the pass rush. I need to see Byron Young have a big game here. I need Timothy Smith. I need to see Justin Bogby. DJ Dale, who has struggled at nose guard. I don't get it. I don't know why.
He had his coming out year, and it's been struggles ever since.
It's been struggles ever since. And I'm like, well, you got Timothy Smith there who's bigger, but Timothy Smith hasn't played the best there. And then obviously, I mean, your second best pass rusher that's constantly got pressured is Dallas Turner. Dallas Turner and Drew Sanders. So I'm looking at it, and I need to see other guys really step up, especially in the interior. I need to see our linebackers play a little bit better. I need to see Pete Golding maybe dial up some calls, dial up a scheme where we can try to effectively stop the run first, and then we can try to get after the quarterback. But I think the most important thing, besides Will Anderson, I need to see somebody else step up and get pressure on the quarterback, because we've struggled all year round with players getting consistent pass rush besides Will Anderson.
Yeah, I agree. What are you thinking, Chris?
I'm trying to figure out who's that. Oh, Drew Sanders. That's the guy. Yeah. Does that worry you guys any going forward or for this game or what?
I don't think that doesn't really worry me. Drew Sanders, he's more of an edge defender. He's not that good of a pass rusher yet. He's developmental, but he is that athletic 5-star kid that you can get out in coverage, you can get out in open spaces, he sets the edge really well. And his backup Dallas Turner, who he's actually played okay. He's played pretty well. That's what I was about to bring up. Yeah.
Dallas Turner's been good. If you look at last week, I don't think as many videos as I've done, I think it was the first time I had ever straight up said there were missed penalties. Bad. Right. I usually don't talk about that, especially on the trenches, because we could call a hold every play if we're really wanting to get technical, or just about, right? I thought there were 4 or 5 times where a Mississippi State tackle was along for the ride on Dallas Turner that stopped him from making a play. I'm very interested in him. Really glad you brought up that name, Jance. Very interested in how he's going to do. To Jance's point, Drew Sanders, ton of upside, but it's almost the same problem with Billy Bowman, and it's not a problem, but you'll get what I mean when I say it.
Yeah.
In high school, he was utilized at so many different positions. He's king of everything, master of none.
Yeah.
With the ability to become master of whatever it is you want to put him at. He's got all the ability you could want. But he was utilized at so many different areas in high school, he's just never really had the time to learn that position through and through.
Yeah. No, I got you. So I would say, just my final standpoint, to wrap everything up with a bow on this, Alabama's the best team in the SEC right now.
Yes.
And I
No.
don't say that lightheartedly. Like I say that like really believing that. They're the
Them or
best
Georgia?
team. They're the best team in the SEC right now. I think that when they play Georgia, I think you're going to see that defense is going to be all hyped up. They're going to be going crazy. They're going to be going nuts those first few drives. When it settles in, I think Nick Saban and Bill O'Brien, I think they're going to have something dialed up for them. And I think that play styles. And I'm not going to say, oh, well, Georgia hasn't really played anybody and all the rest of that stuff, but I will say this right here. I don't think Georgia hasn't played Matt Corral or a Bryce Young this year.
They haven't played Florida yet.
Yeah. So if you're asking me, like I told you the last time we were on, I think Florida is a team that can give you that blueprint game of how to really attack them and how to beat them, because I have the weirdest feeling. I have the weirdest intuition that Dan Mullen may not make the complete switch, but you're going to start seeing a lot more of Anthony Richardson. I really do. So I think that, but when Bryce Young sees that defense, I think he's going to be able to challenge them vertically, the intermediary game as well. He's going to be able to pass all over the field against them. I think he's going to be able to challenge them and give them a challenge. And that's going to be something that they haven't really seen this year. You know, a lot of people wanted to tell you that Kentucky was going to be that team that could challenge them, but I'm like, no, Kentucky doesn't have that type of passing game. They may have some guys on the perimeter who can make some things happen, but I mean, let's just be honest with you, that their quarterback is going to be a serious game manager. I think that now, granted, he beat him out, but I think that if they had like a Joey Gatewood back there who could actually use his legs for real, and actually do something, but he transferred, he got beat. So obviously this guy's the better quarterback. You just have to give it to him. But he's not dynamic. He doesn't really scare you. He's not a threat to really make you kind of change things. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about early on with the play styles and everything. Like a team like OU, look at West Virginia, look at Nebraska. They don't typically run offenses like that. They want to get out there and kind of run with you and kind of, move the ball down the field. But because they know that they're a bit outmatched, they have to scheme differently. So I think that when you look at a team like Georgia can scheme however they want to against all these other teams that they played thus far during the season. But as you get into this last stretch of the game season, and then when you go to the SEC championship game, you're going to have to change some things. You're going to have to get out of your comfort zone and say, okay, well, we're going to have to actually do something differently against Alabama, because they have too many weapons that actually can get open. So yeah.
I'll say this real quick, and I have to say Georgia's the number one team for this particular reason. It's because of trench play. Yeah. Bama has struggled in trench play. Chris Owens, he can't play right tackle.
Oh God.
Chris Owens is a center. We have our center playing at right tackle, and again, I don't know who was supposed to be the right tackle going into the particular year, but we need to put Chris Owens back at center. That's his most, or at least slide him in guard. Darian Delcourt, Emil Ekiyor, and Chris Owens has struggled, particularly on that right side of the offensive line. And I look at a matchup like Georgia, even though I agree, Georgia, they're the real life version of what a boa constrictor looks like. They suffocate you. They're not going to dominate you in the first half, but they'll suffocate you. They're a team that's going to grind you out for 4 quarters until eventually you'll tire out, and that's when Georgia can go to get on. And to be fair to Georgia, they're missing 5 of their best receivers. They just got their tight end back, and we haven't even seen JT Niels he's played a game or 2. So for the most part, we've seen their backup quarterback come in, and he's not a surprise. You're not going to win the SEC championship with Stetson Bennett, but it's trench play, and it's Alabama on our defensive line. Besides Will Anderson, there's no one on our defensive line that stepped up and made huge plays. DJ Dale has struggled at nose guard, and one of the 2 particular things Georgia does well is that they can dominate you on the offensive line, and they can absolutely suffocate you on the defensive line and rotate 3-4 players, keeping their players extremely fresh, and they also have the athletic ability and speed to absolutely just affect Bryce Young. And what has been our struggle for the University of Alabama? It's struggling against the blitz. It's struggling against particular defenses that can make this offensive line and Bryce Young confused. And Bryce Young is still he's a redshirt freshman. He still is young. He's still trying to learn, develop his game, and try to really recognize any type of defensive schemes imaginable. And Bill O'Brien has not been the best. He's not as creative. He's not a guy that gets his players out in open space. He is no Steve Sarkisian. He's more of a guy. I think his scheme is more set for what Alabama did back in 2014, 2015 with Lane Kiffin more than I would think in today's modern age where it is up tempo, where you do get the players out, you get the best players, the football in open spaces. So I think from a stylistic standpoint, Georgia matches extremely well with Alabama. Until Alabama gets stronger in the interior, I think Georgia is the better team and they'll beat them.
Now here is where I disagree with you. Let me come back at you, Jance. You guys, I heard you guys kind of expressing your feelings towards one Pete Golding, and it seems like Pete Golding simplified the defense for those guys against Mississippi State to a point where it was like, hey, let's just kind of get after them. Like let's stop thinking so much and let's actually just react and just play football. And I kind of think that if you see that trend, those players be able to actually just be athletes and just do kind of what they do best instead of him trying to run something complex, I think you'll see them actually start integrating more of those complex schemes back into it, and they'll have that ready. But I'm just saying, like, you can say all that stuff about Georgia's offensive line and all the rest of that stuff, but they still haven't seen a pass rush like the one that you guys were presenting in the SEC championship. So I mean, that's how I always feel like going into the Big 12 championship game against Iowa State last year. Everybody was like, well, they beat you guys early this year. And I'm like, well, yeah, but that was early this year in September. Now it's freaking December. And now these kids have grown up. We got Ramondre back. We're pretty much a different team than what we were. You got some guys who've actually accepted their role, bought into their role, kind of know they have a better command of the offense and the defense. And I feel like with the way you guys are talking about Will Anderson and some of these other guys, I mean, those guys are primed to have special games, especially when it's a game that at the level of that. So I just can't. The way that I have it, and the way that at the point that I'm at right now, just like I am with OU, you could talk all that noise about OSU is this and Iowa State can make a run and Texas is back and all the rest of that stuff. But until somebody comes and takes it from Alabama, somebody comes and takes that Big 12 championship away from OU, I can't go against them. So it's something about like with OU, for example. When it's like everybody forgot this year. I talked to Steven with Fanatic Perspective, Nick with Nino's Corner. I'm like, 6 years running has to mean something to you. You get what I'm saying? It doesn't have to scare you, but you have to respect it. And I think there's a certain respect factor because when's the last time Georgia's has beat a Nick Saban team? I think they had a better year. They had a better chance last year with
2007.
Mac Jones was the quarterback, to be honest with you.
2007 when Nick Saban's first year at Tuscaloosa, and they barely even won that game too.
Yeah, and that's 14 years ago. So that's what I'm saying. They and don't get me wrong, they've come close. They've come close a couple of times, but close ain't good enough. So, I mean, that's just kind of where I'm at it. Like, they got to come and actually take that game. They got to come out there, go up 14-0, 21-7, 21-3 and like, that will be when I'm like, I'll text time and like, yeah, Georgia's the better team. Until then, I can't really sit here and say they're the better team, even if they are undefeated.
And I think that's fair. I think there is something to that, right? Like, at the end of the day, that's why I said when the other day Paul Feinbaum did a bit, and he was saying Alabama's done for the playoffs. They're done.
Yeah.
And he said that right after the A&M loss. And I can certainly understand a little bit where he's coming from. You're in the SEC. Before your SEC championship game, you drop a game. You know if you win out, you're going to have to take on the number 1 or the number 2 team in the nation, in Georgia. That's tough, right? That's the optics of it aren't good. The reason I was so surprised is, one, you didn't even wait to see how Alabama was going to respond.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, you don't even know if this team is going to learn, if they're not. And two, it's Nick Saban. And maybe that makes me a homer in this regard. But, like, at the end of the day, I'm going to put faith in Saban, right? Because more times than not, he's been right.
Yeah.
He's been good. He's been good for it.
The problem for a team like Alabama, kind of just like it is for OU, a loss should not be the motivating factor for you to get better.
For sure.
It should not be the motivating factor. It should not take a loss for you to understand that, hey, we do actually have some problems. The coaches have been calling us out for it. We're just so much better than these other teams that we can make up for it, but there are things that we need to address. It shouldn't take that. So, I can understand where Paul Finebaum's coming with that, especially in the vaunted SEC, as top heavy as it is. But still, I think that you're looking at.
Hey, man, I'm telling you, it's one thing to look at the outside and at the end of the year and see it. I'll give you a perfect example like this.
Yeah.
Flat out muscles Texas from start to finish, right? Yeah. Destroys them. And we had the conversation earlier. Someone was saying the transitive property is the best way to look at things, right? I disagreed. But if we're using the transitive property, there's one right here, right, to kind of gauge the SEC relative to the Big 12. OU struggled with Tulane. Tulane got boat raced by Ole Miss. Ole Miss got boat raced by Alabama. So in that transitive equation, does that mean Alabama absolutely boat races OU into the next century? No. But that's why we can't use the transitive property. And that's why I say it's hard to gauge SEC teams until you've been in the entirety of the schedule and you've gotten a feel for it, because it is such a unique league. It is such a unique league.
I'm going to tell you now. I'm big fans of Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin, but I'm just going to be honest with you. When OU does make it to the SEC, it doesn't scare me going to Oxford or Starkville. I welcome that. I mean, going to Vanderbilt, teams like that, I'm like, okay. Tennessee, I mean, hell, we play Tennessee. I'm not really worried about those games. I think the SEC, I've always said the SEC is top heavy because when you look at the bottom half of it, and I think it's going to get better now. And I think you see teams getting better. Where Arkansas has finally found a pulse in their program with Sam Pittman. Kentucky is always, they're like 1 year they're good, the next 2 years they're terrible, then they're really good that other year. They recruit really well with Mark Stoops.
I guess it just depends what division of the SEC we're looking at, because we can say the SEC is top heavy. But if we're looking at the top 10 relative from the last 10 years, there's been multiple more SEC teams ranked within the top 10.
Look,
legitimately
I get that, but when your league is based off of basically five teams with Alabama, LSU, Auburn on the west, and then on the east, it's literally going to be either Georgia or Florida. You want Tennessee to be good, but Tennessee hasn't been good since the early 2000s. I mean,
no doubt about it. No doubt. But I think you're also looking at that, and you just listed how many of the college football's top 10 biggest brands?
I'm just saying five teams.
Okay.
I'm not here to say that the Big 12 is better. I'm just saying that
sure.
it's.
But what other conference do we look at and we name 5 teams that are legitimate powerhouses?
You can't. You can't, because even in the Big Ten, those after Ohio State, it's kind of like, y'all are trending in the right direction, but yeah.
Now here's where I do agree, Jance. I'm interested in hearing y'all, from hearing from you. I think OU's in a much better place to move to the SEC than is Texas. OU's they have coaching continuity. They have a quarterback that's a true freshman right now that's doing very well. They got young wide receivers. They have an identity. I think they're in a much better position to make the move than a Texas. I mean, if we just look at things all held equal, if the move happened next year, Texas, you're hoping you can get a lot fixed within a year. What do you think, Jance?
I think when Oklahoma makes the move to the SEC, they're going to be fine. Oklahoma is going to bring a certain identity that very similar to what A&M did. A&M, remember A&M Missouri, their first year going into the SEC, Missouri had a bad year, but then the following year they made it to the SEC championship game. And then A&M, we all know what Johnny Manziel, they went 11-2 and 9-3 in the regular season, and they changed how the SEC went from a typical pro style physical defense to a spread to now kind of what you're seeing today, more spread. So Oklahoma, when they make the move, they're going to, once again, revolutionize what the SEC is going to be like. And I think it's going to it's better for the SEC when it comes to recruiting. It's better for them when it comes to a TV marketing type of standpoint there. So Oklahoma is going to be fine. They got the talent, they got the coaching, they got the brand, they have everything you possibly want. If maybe besides the defense, the defense got to get a little bit better there. But Oklahoma will be fine. It's really Texas that's the biggest concern, because Texas is still trying to figure out what they are. They've had tons of coaching changes. They've had tons of controversy in the program. The boosters they're not happy about it. They've been losing the recruiting battle to A&M and Alabama and even other teams that have come into the Texas and still most of the majority of their blue chip recruits. So I think that from a Texas standpoint, going into the SEC, it will be a little bit of a benefit for them because, again, you can use the SEC argument now for recruiting. But as far as competing, well, first of all, what division are you going to be in? Are you going to be in the SEC East or the West, or are they going to?
And what does the divisions look like when you get in there?
Yeah, and because Texas, if they go and they play in the SEC West, and you have to deal with Alabama, LSU, A&M, Auburn on a good day, that's extremely difficult. That's one of the hardest divisions you're ever going to compete in. I mean, even if you're in the East, which the projections look like you're going to be in the East, you got Oklahoma there, you got Florida, you have Georgia, you have Kentucky that can compete. So Texas it would probably be the only team that I would have probably huge concerns with if I'm a fan going into there, only because I don't know what the identity of the program is going to look like. What's the confidence from the players? What's the psychology looking like there? But Oklahoma will be fine. They get into the SEC, they're gonna be easily one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the SEC for sure.
RIP.
Yeah,
I
honestly,
think I think Texas will be okay, but it'll take years. It'll take a few years for them to actually gain some ground. I just don't know. I don't know, man. Because outside of Missouri, if you put them in a pod with, you go OU, Missouri, Arkansas, and Texas. Or excuse me, you go OU, Texas A&M, Texas, and Arkansas. That's a gauntlet itself because any of those teams are good enough. I think Arkansas is surging in the right direction. No, I'll say they're trending in the right direction because I'm still hesitant to.
It's a long way to go still.
Yeah, because I think that KJ Jefferson is the bridge guy. I think he's the guy who gets you there, but I think you kind of got to find somebody who's a better passer. And I mean, he's a redshirt freshman. I believe he's got time to grow into that role, but it's just a case of, are they going to be that patient with him? And I mean, he commands the offense. He's great. He's done great things this year, but I just think we need to steal a little bit more from him, the passing game. But as far as Texas coming over there, I've said it before, I've said it jokingly and I've said it just being totally real. You're getting a winning brand with OU, and then you're just getting a money brand. You're getting a big brand with Texas. So Texas is going to be able to put SEC by their name, by their logo, by all the rest of that stuff. It's just the fact that Texas is going to have to bring it. I do think that Steve Sarkisian has them trending in the right direction as far as what he's trying to bring, but
it's going to take time.
Yeah, it's going to take time. And Ty, I'll be real with you that I've watched basically all your videos, and I haven't seen that many from Texas recently as far as recruits are concerned. And I'm like, I feel like there's a lot of recruits out there who are kind of just waiting. Like, I still need to see more.
That's recruiting right now. I mean, this past week has kind of been an exception, but that's kind of the state of recruiting right now. It's this almost like everybody's holding their breath, and at any second it feels like it's just going to pop. It's great. It's awesome.
Yeah. But for Texas, you're hoping that you can land a an Evan Stewart. You gotta land a kid like that. You got to get somebody else out there who's another big time guy who can help out Xavier Worthy. Because Xavier Worthy is explosive as everybody, people are going crazy over him. He had a 261-yard performance against us. I'll give him that. But outside of that, he has not been just, oh my gosh, amazing this year. But
it's what he allows for everything else to open up, right?
Yeah.
Like it's his ability to affect the game without having the ball.
I think that you would see them be more successful if guys like Josh Moore would step up. I think that if he was having a better year, then obviously I think that Jordan Whittington would giving you what he does give you, and then with Xavier Worthy, that would give him the platform that he needs to really launch off of. But I don't think that Casey Thompson, for what it's worth, Casey Thompson's done more with less than a lot of people are giving him credit for.
I think the one thing when Texas lands in here is that I think more teams, to try to counter what Texas is going to be doing, which is trying to get back to their recruiting advantage, more teams from the SEC will delve into Texas, which again, the motivation, there's already a motivational factor, which is, again, Texas is huge when it comes to getting some of the best prospects, but you don't want to give Texas the opportunity or the chance to kind of rebuild their program. When you're in the SEC, we're stomping you out. We're not gonna give you the chance to get back in there. So again, I mean, Texas is already losing, the recruiting battle. Again, Evan Stewart, you want him, you want Harold Perkins, you want Devin Campbell, you want Denver Harris, which he's projected to go to Alabama. You already lost Kelvin Banks to Oregon as a 5-star quarterback. Cade Klubenik, you already lost him to
the Cade Klubnik loss.
Yeah. Oh boy, you lost him to Clemson. The A&M got a 5-star kid from Texas. So by the time they get into the SEC, what's going to stop Georgia for potentially competing? Like, if you already look at the SEC, Georgia, to kind of counter it, went into Alabama, and they got some of their blue chip recruits. Auburn, which normally they border between Georgia and Alabama, but they already went to Georgia to kind of counter that Georgia thing. Yeah. And they went in there and stole a lot of their blue chip recruits. Guys, look at the running back from the state of Georgia. So I think from a recruiting battle standpoint, that's going to be fun to watch. That's going to be extremely fun to watch when Oklahoma and Texas gets into the SEC.
Well, Jens, you got to understand. I mean, you answered your question, man. Like they're already doing that. Yeah. Kids are turning away from going to Texas. Steve Sarkisian is a lifeline for Texas right now. It really boils down to him, because let's say Steve Sarkisian goes 7-5 this year. Let's say that he goes 9-3 next year, and let's say he finally gets to 10-2 his last year. And let's say that for some odd reason they want to go ahead and let him go. I really think not Tom Herman. I think Steve Sarkisian is the one it all really boils down to. I think it's on him on how this Texas program goes the next probably, I would say, 5 to 8 years, to be honest with you. I think that it's really on him to protect that, because I know a lot of Texas fans are like, well, with Steve Sarkisian coming and now it's moving to the SEC, that just helps us build a wall here in Texas to keep all those Texas kids. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Hell, half of OU's team is Texas kids. You look at Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, they come out of Texas and say, oh, yeah, you're a 5-star. Why don't you come up here?
We just pulled two triple legacies from Texas.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, you're looking at Texas and saying there's an obvious problem. It's been development for years, but now it's just a lack of, we can't keep kids that are here in our pond. We can't even keep them out here in our pond. They're going out there to see what's going on in the ocean. You know what I'm saying? So,
and it's one of those things, Evan Stewart is someone I think, Jance, I can only imagine you completely agree. As an Alabama fan, man, I want that kid a part of this class.
That kid is electric. That kid is electric,
I got the opportunity to watch him, man. He's really, really good, man. He's really, really good. Watching him on film is one thing. Watching him in a game, he's got it. He's a very talented player. But we talk about development, right? And that's got to be such a big thing. We talked about the Brockermeyer twins. For those of you not aware, Texas has the state of Texas in the class of 2021, which was the class that Alabama, in my opinion, signed not my opinion, in fact, Alabama signed the greatest recruiting class of all time. In my opinion, the greatest offensive line class of all time. They pulled two twins from the state of Texas, Blake and Tommy Brockermeyer. Blake and Tommy Brockermeyer's grandfather played for the University of Texas. Their father played for the University of Texas. Their older brother is currently the middle linebacker for the University of Texas. And they said no and went to Alabama. Now, part of that was Tom Herman pulling one of the dumbest, boneheaded moves I've ever heard of and not offering one of the twins. You had the number one tackle in one twin and the number one center in the nation in the other twin. And Tom Herman said, no, we're not going to offer them both. We're only going to offer one.
They didn't offer James.
That's unbelievable. So you lose that. But when they go to Alabama, they flat out said, Tommy Brockermeyer said, hey, 10 of the last 13 tackles that have played at this school are in the NFL right now putting in work. What am I going to do? You think I'm not going to choose Alabama? And it's part of the reason I was so sad the other day. Not sad. It's really cool to see Luther Burden choosing Missouri. That's awesome. If he can go home and really do something at Missouri, that's going to be such an awesome story. You know what I mean? Like staying home, that's got to mean a lot to him. But man, I wanted him at wide receiver U. I wanted him at Bama because that young man is fantastic.
Did you just call Bama wide receiver U?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
How are they not?
You can make the argument now.
I'll keep my QBU and I'll let you have that conversation. That's wild.
We're coming for QBU too.
Hey, OU's got great quarterbacks. How many, since Julio Jones was drafted, how many wide receivers has OU had drafted into the NFL?
That's fine. I'll give you that. I'm not even going to argue with you on that.
Well, no, I'm just saying for the viewers, because this discrepancy isn't something we realize until we look at it. And we have lived in an era of dominance to which we haven't appreciated. Since Julio Jones was drafted, Oklahoma has sent 7 wide receivers to the NFL draft. Yeah. Alabama has sent 7 to the first round. 14.
So that's all great and all. But I will say this right here. Waddle and Devontae Smith, I'll give them a pass because they're rookies in the league. And they're doing their thing here and there and everything stuff. But if you want to look off, let's just go off of Henry Ruggs.
They're in their second year. Henry Ruggs was hurt last year. Jerry Jeudy's hurt this year. Amari Cooper is one of 4 wide receivers to start his career off with 3 back-to-back 1,000-yard wide receiver seasons.
Amari, Calvin, Julio.
I get
like that.
Yeah. They're putting nobody's worried about Calvin Ridley, but I'm just saying on the Dallas Cowboys as is, who's the best wide receiver on that team?
Amari, who was teaching CD how to run routes.
Okay. No, I can't talk to you.
CD literally got on Twitter.
I can't talk to you right now. There's a reason why he's wearing 88. There's a reason why he's wearing 88.
And to be fair, like look at Calvin Ridley. Who's the second best option besides Calvin on the Falcons compared to what CD Lamb has with Gallup, with those tight ends, with Amari Cooper. Like you got 2 1,000-yard receivers with CD.
So here's a question I'm going to ask you. Defensive coordinators in the NFL, they know their football, right? Who are they putting their number 1 corners on?
That's fine.
It is fine. It's very fine.
Who has the higher upside?
I have no idea. Amari Cooper is a freak. I think you don't realize how good Amari is.
No, Amari. This is what I give Amari. Amari has an amazing route tree. He has great feel for the game.
I don't think you really get Amari's game, fam. Amari is one of 4 wide receivers in NFL history to start off the first 5 years of their career in the manner he did.
Okay.
Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, Odell Beckham Jr. are the 3 that rank above him. That's fact.
I'm just letting you know. And
he did it with the Raiders.
The most talented wide receiver on the Dallas Cowboys right now is CD Lamb.
Maybe. He's very talented. Nobody's taking that away from him. But if we're looking at this and we're saying Bama wide receivers don't produce in the NFL, CD would be incredibly lucky if he sniffed half of Julio's career. Right or wrong?
I don't know about that.
Julio's on pace to smash every wide receiver record there is.
Notice you still haven't talked about Henry Ruggs or Jerry Jeudy. They haven't really done anything.
Henry Ruggs is number 1 in the league right now in yards per catch. He's averaging 22 yards per catch. And he's
All
like
I know
30
is
yards.
this right
So
here.
what did
30
CD do last year? Because if we're just taking into account off years, what did CD do last year? Right? He's having a great year this year. His upside is unbelievable. But now we're getting into an argument where we're framing our arguments based off of tinted glasses.
No,
right?
he had a better year than those two last year.
Yeah, no doubt. But my point is, he didn't have a better year than Amari his first year, all things equal.
I mean, you got to think about it too. With three
pandemic,
different quarterbacks during the year, you're not going to have a good year anyways. I mean, they were down
Derek
to the third
Carr got hurt with his back, and Amari had to deal with that. What are you talking about? He had back surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Fam, come on.
Wait, hold on.
Football. Come on, this is light work. Light bars.
Hold up.
I can't do that.
Think about this for a second. Henry Ruggs right now has 20 receptions for 445 yards. He's number one in the league right now in yards per catch with 22.3 yards per catch. That's the best out of all the receivers right now in football. CeeDee Lamb right now has, I think, 32 or 35 catches right now for 497 yards. Like, just think about that. And Henry Ruggs is the number one he's the number one receiving option, right? Besides Waller at the tight end position, he's their number one receiver that you put the number one cornerbacks on. CeeDee Lamb right now, you can make an argument. What, he has two, maybe the number
cornerback three
is covering.
Sometimes cornerback three.
I mean,
y'all are discrediting my boy because there's times.
No, we're just talking facts.
There are times I'm not even a Dallas Cowboy fan. There are times when I will switch over to the channel and I'm saying, damn, it's like Amari's been quiet this entire game, but CD is balling out. Wilson
Why is CD balling out?
For sure.
Why is CD balling out?
Come on, man.
But like, seriously, come on, bro. Like, this is if we take Amari off the field, I'll put it like this, right? Because you're right. CD's having a great year. His upside is unbelievable. CD is one of the most talented receivers in the NFL. But if we're really sitting here talking about Amari Cooper taking the number one corner off of CD and a safety, then we're not talking about a genuine football conversation. We've abandoned all stats and we're going.
I mean, I get that, but I'm just saying the higher upside.
How can we know?
CD won't have to be traded to another team to resurge his career. I'll just say that.
Maybe, but the Dallas Cowboys, but this is the thing, bro. Now, this is where I think you're being a little bit disingenuous because you use this logic all the time in the courtroom. Now you're taking two situations that cannot possibly compared to be analogous as analogous. You're comparing a situation where Amari had to get traded because Derek Carr fractured his back to the Dallas Cowboys, which have one of the best rosters in the league.
Come on, man.
That's not analogous.
Because Derek Carr got his back fractured. He just was not having a good season with them. He was not. Look, you can go off of numbers.
Nobody was.
All of the rest of that stuff. But what I'm saying is that when you look at that Dallas Cowboy team as is right now, okay? Yeah, I'll admit it. He's definitely option number 2 right now. But when CD gets hot, he's hot. When you see CD, the Patriots game, come on, man, 9 catches, over 140 yards. I mean,
didn't Amari's first game, he dropped a 200-yard game? How many of those, like, this is we can have so many different ways of looking at it, but we're not being genuine to the conversation at hand. Right?
Look,
like, if we just
all I'm saying is
that
I'm riding with my boy. I'm riding with CD.
And
I'm riding with Hollywood. I'm riding with Andrews. I'm riding with him.
I will say this. I like Hollywood Brown this year more than I like CD. I understand Hollywood Brown had some crucial catches. But if you look at what he's doing with Baltimore right now, not only is he their number one option, and he's drawing in number one corners, but again, when he's hot, he's hot. Marquise Brown has been an absolute stud when he's on his A game, withdrawing in number one attention from cornerbacks compared to what CeeDee Lamb is doing in Dallas when he has number 2, number 3 guys, and Amari Cooper is getting a lot of the attention over there. I think sooner or later, you're going to have to try to figure out a way to, get CeeDee on his game, because to your point, when CeeDee's on his A game, it's hard to stop him. He's one of the best receivers.
He's absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I think we also need to realize, so I think it's very telling, right? Because when we talk about some of the things it takes to be, we have to also understand that there was a time this offseason where people were calling for, CD to be their wide receiver 1. And then the footage of Hard Knocks comes out and Amari's teaching him how to run routes. Like, dog, Amari's that guy. And CD's tweeting out saying, y'all are doubting him? Him? His career, to start off his career, man, there's only been 3 wide receivers have a better start to their career with a team that was in
I'm not saying that Amari's not that guy. I'm just saying that when you look at the longevity and look at what CD Lamb potentially could be, CD Lamb could potentially go down. I think he's going to go down, at least if you compare those two. I think after it's all said and done, then you're going to say, no, CD Lamb was the better of those two. He's the more talented.
Maybe. I'll have to say it like this. Amari had 2 back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. I'm not saying CD has to have 2 back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, but Amari put 3 out of 4 first seasons in the league, 1,000 yards with a hurt quarterback. Yeah. So they both had a hurt quarterback. At the point where if CD goes 4 years without 1,000 yards, what happens then?
I don't see that. I don't see that happening. I think.
Okay, well, if he doesn't do 3 out of the 4 years, what happens then? On a much better offense, with a much better offensive line, with a better quarterback and better weapons to take the pressure off.
It's hard to really say any of that right now.
But no, it's not.
I hate Dallas. I literally hate Dallas. Like I don't.
Oh,
hey, me too. I'm a Vikings.
We all do.
I'm just saying.
We all do.
I just run with my boys. When people ask me like, who's your favorite team? I say I'm a Cleveland Cardinal. I mean,
now look, this is 100% true what Sean said. This is the one thing that kills me about Amari is he is always hurt. When he is healthy, that is true. Oh my God. When he's healthy, he's polling as one of the top 10 wide receivers in the league, unquestionably. I mean, he's just got that juice, right? 6'1", 4'4", 40, tall. I mean, he's super good. But to your point, Hollywood Brown has been incredible. Mm-hmm. Hollywood Brown has got tremendous upside. But the reason why I bring that up, it's just incredible to think about when we're thinking about these monikers we can assign these schools. To think about, like, we have all these schools. Alabama hasn't been known as an offensive powerhouse, but they've put out 14 wide receivers into the NFL, 7 into the first round. And yeah, it's early to say for guys like Ruggs, but Ruggs is putting out a great year thus far. So it's very interesting to see. I think the thing I'm really interested in ending this on, right, is how are we looking at the college football playoff picture? I think that's where I want to ultimately end this stream on. Where are you thinking, Chris? What's your top 4?
Top 4 right now, I would go Georgia, Cincy, OU, and then my 4th team would definitely be Bama. And then I would probably put Ohio State at 5. And then in my earnest opinion, who would I put at 6? I don't know who I put at 6, but I know right now those will probably be my top 5 right as of now.
I think for my top 4, and I'm just strictly just going for the best teams, I would say Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Bama are the top 4 teams, and I would say number 5 right now is Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati, and I agree with Chris, I think they're going to get gobbled by SMU, and it's either going to be on November 20th or it's going to be in that conference championship game against SMU. It's one of those two things in my opinion. I just look at that game against Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is not that good of a football team. They struggle with Florida. They struggle with Florida State. They're just not that good of a team, and I think that really will come back to hurt Cincinnati. I just don't know if they're undefeated, they're going to get in. And especially if you have a case where if Alabama beats Georgia for the SEC championship game, look at Georgia's resume. Like we know we talked about, the styles and, is Georgia's schedule really overrated or not? But the resume, that's the ranked opponents. They're on pace to beating around 5 or 6 ranked opponents by the end of the year. You can't take that away from Georgia, especially if they lose a close game to the University of Alabama. I just don't see Cincinnati getting over Georgia or potentially Oklahoma if maybe they stumble and if they have a loss. I don't see it for this particular year. So I think that those 4 teams. I think Cincinnati will be 5th. 6th, I really don't know, because there's not a lot of teams that have the impressive resume or that have showed that they're capable of hanging with the elites this particular year. But those are my top 5.
Yeah, I think Bama gets in if they beat Georgia, if they get to go undefeated. That's going to be such a tough game, though. Chris, who were your top 4 again? Because I think when I was listening to him, I was thinking like that's the exact 4 I had.
Oh, I went Georgia, Cincy, OU, and then Alabama as of now.
Yeah, I think that's about exactly where I was. Cincy versus SMU is going to be very, very telling. Very telling. One thing, what do we think about Ohio State? No chance they can get in, or do you think they can
Oh, they're
recover?
getting in. They win the
Yeah,
if they
they're
win the
getting
yeah
in.
if they win the Big Ten, they're getting in.
Yeah.
There's no question. Right now, Ohio State looks like they're the best team. Their defense. That's just it. Their defense is getting better. They're getting pressure on the quarterback. They're doing a good job stopping the run. That's all they need because they have the most talented receiving core right now in college football. C.J. Stroud, ever since that Oregon game, it matter. You can make an argument even before the Oregon game. He's played spectacular all year round, and how he's not a Heisman finalist, I don't know. I don't know why he's so low. When if you look at him statistically and just look at him on the field, he's one of, if not the best quarterback right now in college football. But the running game is explosive. They got a great offensive line. They're peaking at the right time.
Yeah.
And compared to some of these other teams in the Big Ten right now, when we're really starting to find out who they truly are, Ohio State is clearly the best team right now, I think, in that conference. So they'll get in.
My uncle always says if you're gonna lose early. It's that
Mm-hmm.
way because
Yeah,
Yep.
people
absolutely.
forget quick. They tend to forget. So you're looking at Ohio State and saying you're exactly where you want to be. As far as like a team like Georgia, and Georgia has, they can lose late and still make the playoffs because the path is there for them. A team like Oklahoma, they could lose, but it's going to really, 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 really dwindle their chances because if you lose a game to any of these teams after, especially now having Caleb, you run the risk of teams of the national media saying, "Oh, you're who we thought you were all along." Team like Bama, you have to look at them. You say, "Well, you can't lose two games and expect to get in." Granted, the SEC bias, but with 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 a team like, and also Cincy, I'll throw them out there. You look at Cincy and you're just saying like, well, you guys don't have the schedule, so you can't lose a game. You have no room for error. Then I look at Pitt and I'm like, no, I'm laughing at that. But Ohio State is in a prime position because the thing is now is that they're surging, they're trending, and they're going to be that team that people will say, oh, well, 8 weeks ago they played like crap. This week now they look fantastic. So everybody's going to fall in love with them, and people are going to call them a Cinderella team because they're going to make this magical comeback. But I'm an OU fan. I've been in that position. Lose to Iowa State early, lose to K-State early, drop a game against Texas Tech, something like that you shouldn't drop, or Baylor or whatnot, and then you go and run the table, win the Big 12 championship, then you go in there as number 4 or number 3, something like that. So it's just all about being the hottest team. You don't want to peak too early. You want to peak at the right time, and that's what it seems like Ohio State is doing. So I definitely see them getting in. Like I said, before. Like I said before, I mean, I honestly, I think how it's going to go. I think you're going to see. I think what will end up happening, you will see um, I think you'll see either a Georgia Ohio State matchup or an Alabama Georgia matchup going into the first game. I think you'll see them as the 1 and 4, and then think you'll see OU at that 2 or 3 spot battling
Okay.
to make it to the championship game. So that's kind of how I see it going down, regardless.
It's going to be so interesting because there are so many different viable scenarios we
Yeah.
have this year, and we usually don't have that. We
Yeah.
usually have a very clear picture.
So think about it. If OU moves, let's say that since he does get beaten, OU moves up to number 2. Okay. Well, let's say that OU runs the table, they win the Big 12 championship game, but let's say that Alabama moves up to number 4 or number 3, and then Alabama runs the table, Georgia runs the table, goes undefeated, meets Alabama in the SEC championship game. Alabama beats them. Then even though they have a loss and OU doesn't have a loss, and I know the committee is going to say, well, they don't have a loss, you're still going to look at Alabama and say, well, they have the better win in the championship game.
That
So
is
by
true.
default, you
Mm-hmm.
can actually put them number 1. That they give the committee every reason to put them as number 1, and then just swap those two, where OU will play at Georgia, Ohio State would have to play at Alabama, and then we go at it from there.
That's what we talked about when we had that live stream, though, before the season, talking
Yeah.
about if they could have the loss. Now, granted, I didn't think that the loss would come at Texas A&M,
No.
but, that is what it is. I thought that if anything, it would come against Georgia, mainly because I thought Texas A&M would have a down year this year. And, they are, but we just couldn't capitalize on it. One of the things before we go, we'll take some questions from the chat. Someone said, and I want to talk about this for a little bit because I actually disagree with this, that Benito has been underperforming so far. It's just what they've been asking him to do. Yeah. He's been asked to do an entirely different role this year, and he's doing it at an incredibly high level. I agree very much with Bombs that Davis is a great player, Jordan Davis for Georgia, but Will Anderson and Nick Benito are doing unbelievable work for their defenses. Chris, speak to us about Nick Benito, because that guy right there he's so good if you're really just breaking down what he's doing on film.
Yeah, they can't stop him. His technique this year has been way, way better. Coming off the edge, there's not too many guys I see actually stop him up. Most of the times when he actually gets stopped up is whenever he's like making a move to try to cut inside. But even at that, they're not getting him, but he makes the defense. He makes that defensive line go, because him coming off the edge really frees up, I believe, like a lot of guys like Isaiah Thomas, Perrion Winfrey, and everybody else is on that D line, because you have to account for him. You have to send guys over there. They're double teaming him this year, but you're also seeing him do something that you haven't really seen him do all that much, which is kind of, you've seen him do it in spurts. Go back to the Baylor game when he got the game-winning interception, but he's playing coverage now a tad bit, especially when we do it running those zone concepts. And I think he's played tremendous this year. I don't think he's underperformed. Like I said, I just think it is about how they're using him. And I guess, especially with us being nicked up and everything, they're kind of asking him to do different things. And I think you could say he's underperformed simply because I know the defense, it seems to be anemic whenever it comes to 3rd and 15, 3rd and 23 for some odd reason. It's like that's an automatic first down for teams on us. But I think that when you look at Nick Benito, if you go back and actually watch the games, you can watch Mr. McIntosh with how he cuts up the games, or you can just literally just watch a full game. Nick Benito is extremely active out there. And that's the reason why, I think he's going to get a first-round grade. I definitely see him actually being a second-round guy, second-round or third-round type guy. But I think he's definitely going to get a shot at possibly – it's going to really come down to his combine. But I think he's putting something special together again this year. But he's kind of under the radar, but it's just how they're utilizing him, though.
Yeah, I completely agree. Jance, what do you think about Will Anderson thus far this year?
Dominant. He's just been dominant, and the fact that he could have had at least 10, 11 sacks this year is just it's impressive. It's like, and again, very similar to kind of how Nick Benito is kind of being used. Like we're now using Will in so many different things. He's doing so much. You can place him as a 3 technique, and he'll dominate. He'll double team the inside. You can push him on the outside rush, and he'll easily take care of things. He has to play as an edge defender against the run. He's been dominant at that. He has been the clear-cut number 1 guy for Alabama this year, and it isn't even close. Like, you can look at Georgia and you look at Jordan Davis and how good he's been, and Wyatt Davis and Adam Anderson and the rest of those guys there. But I think that they all complement each other. They all complement each other because they're all dominant in specific areas where it's so much easier for those guys to perform at the level that they are. There's no one besides Will Anderson that's playing at that particular level. There's no one there that's making Will Anderson a better player compared to what Jordan Davis is making Devontae Wyatt is. So I think that for Will Anderson to kind of be that sole defensive player that is making everyone better, that's making everyone get one-on-ones, and that's getting the double teams, that's just impressive. And I would not be surprised at all if he's the number 1 prospect going into next year.
I couldn't disagree. I couldn't agree more. Especially when you look at the commodity that is edge rushers at the next level, how he wins. Now, let me know if this is unfair. When I watch Will Anderson, that get off, the way he wins, are we thinking that not only he could be the number 1 edge prospect, and Jance, maybe this is what you were alluding to, could he be the number 1 draft prospect?
Yes, and I know this is not a fair comp, but Derek Thomas. I mean, if you look at what Derek Thomas did back in the '80s with Alabama, it was the same as a freshman. Just dominated with his athleticism and speed. And then once he was able to, the more years he got into, and the more he was able to develop more of a technique, he became an overall complete player. And that's what we're seeing for Will Anderson. Like there are certain things that I've seen for Will Anderson from a pass rushing standpoint that I've never even seen from him last year. Last year he was more of a blue collar worker. He was more of a guy that he didn't really use a lot of finesse. He strictly used a lot of power and speed to try to get around defenders. He's now using technique. He's learning now. He's growing as a player, and I think that the more and more he plays, and the more and more tougher the competition he gets, and his willingness to study film and to learn from the greats and get better in those particular positions, I think he will be the best NFL prospect, because I cannot think of one player this year on the defensive side of the ball that's just been that dominant to where he's commanding. If you take Will Anderson away from the play, you just have a great chance of beating Alabama if you take him away. Like I seen when A&M is strictly running the ball away from Will Anderson, and that's where the majority of their success running the football came from. Like that tells you all you need to know about a particular player and his role on the team. There's no one else besides Will that's stepping up, but there is no question he will be the number one draft prospect going into next year, barring injury.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Benito, he'll enter the draft this year, right?
Yeah, Benito's
Yeah.
probably most likely gone, I believe.
Yeah,
He should be a late first round pick in my opinion.
Yeah,
He
should.
did
I
so
know
much.
before the season they had him projected going to the Chiefs at like the last pick of the first round. So he could. I mean, it's going to come down to the combine. How fast are you in that 40? Your 40 time is going to really predict a lot, I believe. I think your production will get you there to be at least a first day or a second day guy, but that combine could really solidify. I mean, the combine is really going to solidify exactly where you're at.
I think
Yeah.
he's more of a 4.6, 4.7 type of guy, but he's more quick than he is fast. He's very
Yeah.
quick and he's extremely instinctive. And I think teams
Yeah.
will probably just overrate that in my opinion, but teams
Yeah.
look at it. They look at a 40.
Something Chris said. Hey, we're not going to talk about RJ Young because RJ Young is great. No matter, the man is so talented at what he does, and he's been a huge inspiration for myself in getting started into this. So I have nothing but incredibly positive things to say about RJ. But this is something that I talked to Chris about. This is something he's not in here. Another OU fan, Cam, he and I talked about. Before the season, Cam messaged me and he said, "Do you think Alabama and OU will have top 10 defenses this year?" And I said, it's possible, but unlikely that they both have top 10 defenses this year. I just don't know how likely it is. But I don't know that you need to, right? Like, you don't need for one defense in the nation. You just need to have not the worst defense in the nation, right? Like, you just can't have a bad defense. So OU has the ability to be, a fine defensive team, but there's a lot of injuries right now. Chris talked about that. I think they have a plenty good enough defense, right? As long as everybody gets back healthy. They have a good enough defense.
The thing about OU, whenever it comes to the postseason, put the Big 12 aside. They're good enough to win the Big 12 as is. But when you get to the postseason, there's two things that have to happen for OU to actually make any game worthwhile this year. One, the defense is going to have to be great. They're going to have to be great on that day. They're going to have to play. We're going to have to get stops. We're going to have to do everything. You don't have to be amazing, but you need to be every bit of great. And there's a difference between those two, at least the way I'm putting it. You could be really good, or you can go out there and just be great. You don't have to be dominant. You don't have to go out there and shut anybody out. You don't have to go out and do this. You just need stops. And then the second thing it's going to boil down to is Lincoln Riley. Because I love Lincoln. I think Lincoln's great. I think to be honest with you, I think he's the best offensive mind in college football now. My problem with Lincoln is that sometimes I'm like, hey, I think you're being a bit overzealous with this. Let's just run the damn ball. Like, let's do what we need to do. Because if you go back to the Georgia game, he took his foot off the brakes. I mean, he took his foot off of the gas. Okay. He just let up. He was like, hey, let's just call a safe game. We got this game in the bag. Let's win. And you saw exactly what happened. Our defense could not hold anybody to anything. And then when you look at the LSU and you look at the Alabama game, you're just like, damn, like what were you calling, Lincoln? Like those that just it made no sense. Like I don't know. Sometimes Lincoln has like one or two drives where his play calling, you're just like, what are we doing? We didn't even run the ball one time. Wait a minute, we never passed the ball. We didn't even pass the ball one time. So it's sometimes like he falls in love with this or these certain packages, or he has this type of script at this particular junction in the game. He's going to stick with it. I'm just like, here we go. Here we go. So I think it's those two things right there that are going to be the X factors for OU is, does your defense come to play that day? They don't have to be world beaters, but they just need to play great that day. And then it's just going to boil down to play calling, because you have the weapons to compete, but you can't go out there and spot somebody 28 points and then that just kills your game plan, you know? So
yeah, I think the defense is there, the talent's there, health is huge, right? Like I think there's a Bear Bryant quote, if I'm not mistaken, where he was talking about winning a national championship, and he said, "Well, you got to be lucky." And the reporter was like, "Luck? What are you talking about? Like you recruit?" And he's like, "Well, it's football. Anybody can get hurt at any given second, and it's just the nature of this game. There's luck involved in getting all the way, because there are some teams who would be very good who experience injuries that derail them. That's the beautiful thing about this game. If
I could say one thing about that.
Absolutely.
Kind of alluding back to Georgia real quick, and I understand, again, they're the number one team ranked in the nation, but the fact that they haven't really been lucky with injuries, that they're missing four of their best receivers, that JT Daniels hasn't even played yet, they had to heavily rely so much on their defense that Kirby Smart says we don't even know when JT Daniels is going to play again. We don't know if he's going to be, we don't know. We don't know when Kearis Jackson's going to be 100% healthy. We don't know if Jermaine Burton's going to be there yet. So injuries is going to play a huge factor into who's going to win this national championship, because if Georgia does make the playoffs and they do play against Oklahoma, and if you don't have your best players on the field, Oklahoma has the style to beat Georgia. They have a style on the offensive side of the ball which Georgia is not used to seeing. And
very true.
So health definitely plays a huge factor into it. I agree.
Yeah, I think that we got people talking about the rankings. There's a difference between ranking where you currently deserve and how good you actually are. And that's 100% true.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's 100% true. Because that's something we see every week, right? Like I've had teams say Bama shouldn't be in the top four. Maybe, but do we think that they aren't one of the best four teams in the nation? I still do, but I'm also an Alabama fan. So
with OU, I was kind of surprised that they got bumped. They were bumped up, but at the same time, I think that them falling to 6 and then earning their way back to being number 3 in the country, I think it was earned. It was
absolutely,
they earned
no
that.
doubt.
So they had to work for that. So I think people around who are even skeptical about OU still and don't even like OU, I think they're fine with it simply because they know, okay, they didn't look great at first. They fell all the way to 6, where we thought that they should be. Now they're just, one of those teams that seems like, I guess they're catching fire at the right time. So
like last year.
Yeah.
Very, very indicative to last year, which is what, made OU a scary team to me going into this year. So as we close down, I just kind of want to take the time, let Chris and Jance give their final takes on the college football weekend ahead of us, where you can find them and everything like that. So Chris, I'll let you start.
Hey man, look, if my Sooner boys are watching this, I just need y'all to stay healthy, get us to 8-0. Let's focus on Texas Tech next week. By halftime, I want to be out of the house because I don't even want to pay attention to the score. I just want to go and watch other games and talk Ty a little bit, okay? But hey, everybody else, y'all can find me with Seth Oliveris on the Horns Down podcast. We're on every podcast format out there: Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can find us everywhere. We have a YouTube page as well. Horns Down Podcast is where you can find us at. You can find me at Chris with a K on Twitter. Definitely got some really good pieces that you should watch, you should see, because I troll Texas.
Oh God,
They're
great.
So
They're fantastic.
Yeah. But no. Hey, definitely, Todd. Thank you for letting me do this show, and I love all the content that both you guys put out. Jance, like I told you last time, your rants, they give me life, bro. Like I listen to that. Your rants, they give me life. But no, I listen to a lot of stuff as well. I actually there was one time when before the season started, Jance was actually talking about who he asked a question on, I think a live stream. I think it was during a Bills game. He was talking about who could potentially be like a top wide receiver in the league or who was going to have a good year next year. And I brought up CeeDee Lamb, and he agreed with me. So, I think he gets where I was coming from with that. But anyways, yeah, y'all can follow me on Twitter at Chris with a K and at the Horns Down Podcast.
Yeah, so you can follow my YouTube channel at Jan Sports. I go on numerous amount of takes. I post reactions about different games. I also go on rants too. I just made a rant, and I don't know if you guys know about this, but with the entire Deion Sanders, Brittany Reiner whole type of thing, which is drawing a lot of heat right now. For Jackson State. So that's very interesting. I just kind of went on a little mini rant about that. But yeah, you can follow me on my social medias, Twitter at Jan716, Instagram Jan Sports. Again, ask me any type of questions. I'll definitely respond. If you guys want to chat it up with me, you guys definitely can. You guys are welcome to do that. I'll also say this too, because this is also very interesting. If you guys are huge into recruiting, and if you guys want to look at high school football and those type of games, there's actually a game right now in IMG Academy versus East St. Louis. That's five-star Luther Burden versus five-star Bear Alexander and all those guys right now. That game is actually going on right now, and the score is 14-8 right now. And Luther Burden just took one to the house for 54 yards. That dude is cold. That game, oh my goodness gracious, he just broke 5 tackles, just scored. So that's crazy. So that's Howard. That's Howard. Just IMG with all those 5 stars. That is a hell of a game that's going on right now. So check that one out. We also got Mater Dei versus Servite. That's 2 of the top 2 teams in California playing against each other for Saturday, if you guys are interested in that. So yeah, if you guys are huge into recruiting, follow those games. Those are going to be extremely exciting. But yeah, man, thanks a lot for welcoming me on to the show. Appreciate you guys as usual, man.
Absolutely, man. Y'all already know anytime y'all want on, you are absolutely welcome. Chris, you know it's all love when I'm giving you trouble with CD. At the end of the day, we need to look at it like this. You and I are in a position where we get to split hairs about the most talented players in their respective position in the NFL because of the college teams we root for. Yeah. That's exactly where you want to be, right? So at the end of the day, I appreciate everyone coming on. Chris asked, what time is the podcast every week? So typically, it'll happen every Monday, 5:30. Chris, any given week, is going to be on the podcast. Same with Jance. I mean, half the time, I'll just text Chris the day of and be like, hey, man, what are you doing this afternoon? And he'll hop on. So this is absolutely something we are going to be doing just frequently. But yeah, every Monday, 5:30 at least, when we'll start, do a podcast, talk about the week we just had, and then the week previewing. And Matt, don't worry, I'm a little bit long-winded. It goes a while, as we can see. This one's going at 2.5 hours, and we're still over here talking strong. So you're not going to miss much, man. You're not going to miss much. I can talk. But I appreciate both of you coming on. It's always awesome to talk to both of you guys. I appreciate everybody in the chat. Be sure to go and subscribe to each of these guys, both making great content. Jance has some videos that will put you in stitches listening to him and his rants, but also his regular videos. I mean, dude makes fantastic content, absolutely deserves your subscription. Chris with the Horns Down podcast, he and Seth Oliveris, fantastic Oklahoma content. And if you're not following Chris on Twitter, I have to say you are missing out on one of the better things. I am not that interesting of a Twitter follow. I'm posting straight football. That's it. Chris over here has got an imagination and is much more creative, and he makes some great skits that he's putting out there. Absolutely deserves to be seen. But y'all, thank you so much for coming on. Thank y'all in the chat for taking the time to be with us here this evening. Can't wait for college football tomorrow, and you already know we're going to be back here on Monday talking about this. Speaking of, both of you, what are y'all doing Monday at 5:30?
Probably be on your show.
I'm doing nothing, man. So just hit me up.
Okay. Well, y'all already heard. Monday, 5:30 live stream. Chris and Jance will be on. I'm going to hit up, see if we can't get maybe quarterback spotlight on. I'd like you both to meet him. I'd like him to be in here. Brilliant at evaluating the quarterback position. Works with some NFL guys, both in MLB and NFL. Very, very knowledgeable. Very, very knowledgeable about what he does. Bombs, thank you so much for the $9, man. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. It's just thank you a lot, man. That support is awesome. You know, we do this. Love talking football. Love having you guys in here, but that kind of support, it just really means the world. So can't wait to see all of you on Monday, 5:30 Central Time. And other than that, man, I'll let y'all do y'all's closing remarks because I've been long-winded, and we'll get out of here.
Oh, I'm out, man. Y'all have a good one, y'all.
All right, y'all. See y'all Monday.
Bama fans, get your cigars. Get your cigars ready.
I already have mine.
I already have mine, so get your cigars ready. But yeah, check you guys later, man.
All right, later, man. Y'all have a good evening. Enjoy your evening. Go watch some football. Get ready for college football tomorrow. That's it. See you.